Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you're having a wonderful Monday. I am back on the West Coast of the United States, back in Mama Bites and Papa Bites' house. So it's a little bit early here. So we've got some coffee going. But I am having it was a great weekend, wonderful weekend. And so I hope you guys had a great one too. Love seeing so many folks in the chat. Let's take a look. I haven't done this recently. Saying hi to folks in the chat. I haven't done that for the Menendez mornings or Menendez Mondays. It's morning now. And also I'm looking at these saying good morning. Analytical Blarney AB. Good morning, beautiful people in the chat. I hope you guys are having a great start to your week. Same. We've also got a good hello from Arto Rissanen, handing out rose emojis as usual. We've got Mary M. Hi there. I'm looking forward to hanging out with cool people and some interesting legal carry-on. Wonderful. Debbie Faison, good morning. Good morning. We've got Kit Kat. I'm at the vet waiting for my tiny orphan kittens to arrive. I'm so excited. I love Teeny for our babies. Wonderful. Kit Kat is always doing wonderful things with the stray kittens over where she is. And also saying hello, everyone. Grab your coffee. Let's have another fabulous Menendez Monday Classic Trials session. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. We've also got, let's see. I'm trying not to skip anyone here. Okay, Christian Williams. Hello, Leadham Bike Club family. How are you today? Doing well, doing well. Good to see you again. Karen Maybe. Good morning, everyone. Hope y'all had a swell weekend. Same. Then we've got Draco Amy. Hello, gorgeous. Yes, I'm looking at you. Draco Amy is looking at all of you. Right back at you, Draco Amy. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I know it's super late where you are. Shireen, hello there, everyone. Hope you are ready for another Menendez Monday because it's another Menendez Monday. It's just ever since that popped into my head, I can't get it out. I cannot. Hello, all from Edmonton. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you all had a nice weekend. Love getting my coffee to be ready for Menendez Monday. Same. Ro Mulrian, right? Mulryan? I'm so sorry. One of those is definitely wrong. Morning from Richmond, Virginia. Good morning. Karina Clausen, good afternoon from Denmark. Good afternoon, Karina. Thanks so much for joining us from Denmark. Talon the Hand, hello. Arlie Bell, hey y'all. We'll be on replay crew today, but just stopping in to say hi and have a great stream. Oh, thank you so much. And when you come back, hi. Hi again. Audrey, hi. Hello, Audrey. We've got, and also Shireen with a reminder to hit the like on the way in. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shireen. And we've got Chris Kress. Happy Monday. Your everyday sheep. Another Menendez Monday. Hey, everyone. Hey. Good to see you. Sokotoa, good morning with a coffee emoji. Flyers Gal 12, good morning, everyone. And that is all. We got it. So, okay, wonderful. Hello, everyone. And to everyone else that comes in later and is on replay crew, hello as well. Okay, so last week we got to episode 30. And when we hit 30, I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we've done this for 30 episodes. That's more than half a year. And that was with a break in between. So we are like almost coming up to a year of this. doing this once a week, almost, most weeks. Um, and it's been great. I mean, I have definitely learned quite a bit about this trial, about, the background stuff. I always love when folks are in the chat that have been very, very familiar with this case for a long time. They've read like Leslie Abramson's book on it. They've watched all kinds of documentaries. And it's just it's fascinating to learn about some of this stuff outside the trial, like around the trial, things that were going on in the LA County DA. I retweeted a really great thread yesterday about how there was a lot of like political pressure on the LA County DA because they were considered district attorneys who like couldn't prosecute, couldn't put people in jail, which is like just so wild to me because like I understand that professionally you want to have a set of lawyers that are going to be competent at their job, right? But it seems like, and this is my impression based on, it had a lot of clips and a lot of quotes and things like that it was using. So, I still want, before really jumping on the train, I want to after this trial, I'm like so excited to watch documentaries and read books and stuff on this case about some of the other stuff surrounding it because, you know, there is this big looming question of like, the first trial ended in a mistrial, the second trial convicted, and there were some changes between the two, some big changes. And so were those proper changes? Can those be like analyzed from an objective perspective and to say like, well, I can understand why that decision was made, even if you disagree with it. Is it something that is like legally tenable, professionally tenable? Those are some of the biggest questions. And oh, Mia, that was you. Thanks for okay. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for putting the time into it. But it's one of those things it does seem that there was a very big focus. I don't necessarily want to use the word obsession. I may have said obsession earlier, but I don't necessarily want to use the word obsession until I've like watched more and read more on that specific topic myself. But there definitely was, it seems like, a focus on their win-loss record and whether or not, they were competent in putting people in jail in these high profile cases. But like, you know, I I understand, wanting to have a presentation to the world that like, yes, when it comes to crime, the LA County DA knows how to put people in jail. But like that stems not just from the trial itself, that stems from the investigation. So it's like it's not just the DA's office, it's also the LA County Police Department, but it's also the decision on which cases that you decide to prosecute. So like, you have to look at a case and say like, is this something that there is enough evidence out there that we really think that we can prosecute this case, and we really think that this is something that is going to be a competent case for us to put on, because what we don't they represent the state, right? And the state represents the people. And so when it comes to what we should be demanding of the DA's office in any state, in any county, in any city is justice, right? So because at the end of the day, if you have if you have a DA's office that and a judicial system and judges and all of that, because a lot of judges do tend to be former prosecutors, which doesn't necessarily mean that they are like automatically biased, right? Because we do know some fantastic former prosecutors on YouTube, right? Emily D. Baker's one. Nate the lawyer's one. Like they are I love their legal analysis. They are both very straightforward people, and I trust their legal analysis from all of the conversations that I've had with them and all of the stuff that I've seen of them. And by the way, Emily D. Baker's from the LA County DA. So, she's from this particular office, not necessarily I think after this time. I don't think she's too young to have been anywhere near the DA's office like around this time. But yeah, Christian Williams, the LA DA was under fire at this time. And so that kind of pressure, I think, it may have ended up screwing the Menendez brothers in a way that is improper. So it's just, um it's very, very fascinating to me to see all of that pressure, and so I'm definitely gonna be really interested in jumping into all of that when we're finished here because, it's upsetting. It's upsetting. I've heard of other friends of mine from law school who went to go and be prosecutors afterwards, and they said that, the reason why they decided to go with the, the DA's office that they did was because, like the DA that they ended up working for said, we are in the business of justice, not convictions. Sometimes justice doesn't mean a conviction. So, that is in my personal opinion, that is the proper way to go about representing the state. Um, so there's already enough here that I've seen from this little bit that I've kind of encountered that I'm like, we have some questions. We have some questions. I don't have conclusions just yet, but we do have some questions. So anyway, okay, that's a a rant from me. But last week we heard from four witnesses. We finished with the brothers Aunt Teresita Baralt, um, Jose's sister. She it was mostly cross-examination and some redirect. But nothing really new came out other than there was a focus on her testimony about Lyle's spending after the deaths. Because of course the DA wants their theory of their case is that the brothers killed their parents for the money. Um, and I don't see it at this point. I based on the evidence, I don't see it. I see two brothers who were pushed to the brink, from just in very intensely abusive households, in with abuse that ranged so many different areas. There was obviously a lot of psychological abuse. We heard from second witness yesterday, Peter Cano, the uncle. Like ex uncle or whatever. I mean, he's still their uncle because he's the father of their cousins. But he happened to see Jose hitting Lyle, that's a 5-year-old, square in the chest with a closed fist, for having wet himself in front of people because it was like a stress response to Jose. And so, he took him back and into his room and was beating him. It's just insane. So, we've heard testimony about a lot of psychological abuse. We've now definitively heard testimony about some physical abuse. We've also heard testimony, that is it's not a smoking gun when it comes to SA, but it's it, it's enough. There's enough coming from enough different directions for me personally that I feel pretty solidly that their father, and maybe, yeah, probably their mother too, also SA'd them. It just was such a weird, strange household, and there's enough between Lyle telling his cousin Diane, and then some of the other stuff that other people observed of like weird routines around shower time and all kinds of things like that, that just it to me, I'm relatively convinced. However, I don't want to quite put a nail in that question because I still want to be open to the testimony from Erik and Lyle and the cross-examination of the testimony of Erik and Lyle. So we'll see, what that does. But I feel pretty, yeah. I'm certain that they were definitely abused in a number of ways. Anyway, anyway, then we heard from Janet Stoltzfus and Dr. Barbara Zussman, two teachers of Erik. Mrs. Stoltzfus was a teacher at Princeton Day School. She taught Erik ninth grade Bible class. Ironically, he cheated in that class. um, but she recognized his learning deficiencies, his problems um with learning disability, I guess, that basically every single teacher has identified about him. That was not something that they um that they uh not something that they wanted help with or recognize, it seems like. And then Dr. Barbara Zussman, the English teacher at Beverly Hills High School during Erik's 12th grade year, with an emphasis on Shakespeare. She was very interesting too. And the thing that stuck out to me most was the fact that he struggled so much in that class, but despite that, whereas most students will try to hide because of their learning disability, and she recognized that he probably was dyslexic because of the way that he would replace certain words when he would read Shakespeare out loud in class, as many high school kids have to do in their high school English class. Um, and so he would replace words that just seemed like they made more sense. Um, and but whereas most kids would hide behind that, they just to try to not show that, he actually had the opposite reaction and was like, put me on the field, coach. Like every opportunity he wanted to perform, he wanted to sort of prove himself. It seemed like that was the impression that I had, was he was always trying to prove himself, which is really interesting. Um and so he did also perform a bit of King Richard for the class, because he decided to memorize a soliloquy for his drama class, which of course is something that the prosecution has kind of seized upon, to try to say that he's acting, which is just, it's just wild, especially after having seen actual actors testify in trials. That's not something that the LA County DA could get away with a straight face, right? Because we've seen so many actors, like professional actors, like good actors, Academy Award winning actors, even testifying in trials. Gwyneth Paltrow has an Academy Award. We've seen Johnny Depp, and I mean, Amber Heard's not a good actor, but she's still an actress, right? She still has had roles. So anyway, it's just it's been fascinating. But when he performed for Dr. Zussman's class, just seeing that recognition that was on his face when she said, the funny thing is, I went back and looked at what she responded when the DA asked, like, well, how did he do? And she said, well, as far as like overall actors go, like, eh, eh. But for a 12th grader, he did great. He really did great. And it was a very difficult, thing to do. And I thought he did great. And just that look on his face, that smile that he had, where like he was just looking at her with such fondness, and just like it was like, thank you so much for saying a nice thing about me, and then of course that like fades away as he's like brought back to reality. So it was like such a crazy, beautiful moment, and like a lot of darkness for him, I'm sure. Um, okay. Anyway, so today I've got them in the description below, but we've got Kevin Whalen and we've got his mother, Kathleen Bulow-Cohen. So I'm going to be updating in the chat, in the pinned comment. I'll do that as I normally do, when they begin testifying and when we have a change in that. But most of today is going to be Kevin Whalen, who was a classmate of Erik's at Calabasas High School. So I wonder if they're going to get into, I mean, some of his classwork. I don't know what they're going to get into. I assume probably some schoolwork, maybe Erik's reputation at Calabasas High School. I wonder if there's going to be questions about the run-ins with the law that Erik had while at Calabasas High School, because he got into a crowd where they were like, hopping fences and going to other wealthy houses and just like stealing things because they could, or something like that. Um and yeah. So we'll see. Oh, and also Your Everyday Sheep says, keep in mind Craig's testimony today, guys. That's what I was thinking too, is that, remember Craig Signorelli and some of the other guys that the prosecutors, brought in at the beginning of the trial that were supposedly their friends. And then we get to cross-examination and we're like, these are terrible people. These are not their friends. These are these are horrible. They've totally screwed them at the first possible opportunity, just as like not even just like just testifying as witnesses for the state, but like they threw them they threw them out the window at like the first possible opportunity, just for themselves, like taking Lyle's $10,000 watch because he gave it to me, even though he asked him to hold on to it for him. Not the same thing as ownership, right? Um, so anyway, okay, that's enough talking for now. Um, let's start up here, and we will get to the actual testimony. Okay. Ooh, Care Bear says Kevin, he goes by Casey, contradicts Craig's computer guy story, so that's juicy. Ooh. Okay. Nice little teaser. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Kara, maybe I'm sorry, guys. This is funny. Once it pops up on StreamYard, I saw it in the regular chat, but Kara, maybe am I the only one that hears Signorelli and he sings the Cinderella song? No, you are not. Signorelli, na 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 na. Okay. Anyway, okay, let's go. That's funny.
Kevin Christopher Whalen, W-H-A-L-E-N.
Enough with any sound.
His name's Casey.
And is that what people call you, Casey?
Sure is. Yes, ma'am.
And Casey,
We'll call you Mr. Whalen.
Okay.
yes,
Thanks, Judge.
Mr. Whalen, do you know Erik Menendez?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you come to know him?
He came to high school in Calabasas High School. I went to high school my junior year.
And what year was your junior year at Calabasas High School?
Fall of 87, spring of 88.
If I were to tell you that Erik moved to California in the fall of 86 and began Calabasas High School then, would you know if you met him in his first year there or in his second year there?
It would be the second year. I mean, that was when I got to know him. Was that time?
Okay. And at Calabasas High School, were you a member of any of the athletic teams?
Yes, ma'am. I played football in the fall and I ran track in the spring.
And when you got to know Erik, did you know if he was a member of any of the athletic teams at Calabasas High School?
Yes, he was a member of the tennis team.
You were not.
No, ma'am.
Now, did you know another member of the tennis team named Craig Signorelli?
Yes, very well.
Uh-oh.
Did you know Craig Signorelli before you got to know Erik Menendez?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And at the time that you got
Scribbling,
to
man.
know Erik Menendez, was Craig Signorelli a friend of yours?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long had you known Mr. Signorelli before you met Erik Menendez?
I came to middle school in second grade. Craig was in the third grade, so I'd known him for quite some time, at least of him.
And did you know other students who knew Craig Signorelli?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And all through your schooling, from the time you first came to know Mr. Signorelli through high school, did you from time to time discuss Mr. Signorelli with other students?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point after you came to know Erik Menendez, did you come to go to his home?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall where he was living when he was attending Calabasas High School?
In Calabasas Park.
And if I might approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
We have a picture chart here.
Look at that paisley tie. We are definitely in the 90s.
To this picture chart, do you recognize any of the houses on it?
Yes, ma'am.
And what house do you recognize?
Well, the Calabasas house, 4530.
Get something off here. Okay. You've identified this house here, 4530 Park Livorno.
Yes, ma'am.
And to the best of your knowledge, was that a house that the Menendez family owned or rented?
I don't know. I didn't know.
And during the time that you knew Erik, that he lived in the valley, basically in Calabasas, did he always live at this particular house?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I went to school. Yeah. Yes.
And did you know of another house in the Calabasas area that the family was building or remodeling?
Yes. Kind of above the valley in Mulholland Highway.
And to the best of your knowledge, did the Menendez family ever move into the Mulholland Highway house?
No, ma'am.
They didn't.
No, they didn't. The house was never completed when they were there.
On how many occasions, if you can estimate, Mr. Whalen, did you visit the Park Livorno house while Erik lived there?
20, 30 times maybe.
And was there anything unusual or noticeable about the condition of some of the rooms of that house?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you describe for the jury what was unusual?
Well, it was, the family room was always kind of dirty. And the living room and various rooms had boxes that were there for the duration of time that I knew Erik. And one of the rooms was piled with boxes almost to the ceiling where you couldn't walk into it.
Was that the living room?
Yes, ma'am.
So from the time you knew Erik all the way till he moved from that house, the living room was a room filled with boxes.
And other rooms had boxes the whole time while I lived there.
And did these appear to be the kind of boxes people packed when they moved from place to place?
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you come to know at some point that Craig Signorelli was not permitted at Erik's house?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall specifically hearing Jose Menendez, Mr. Menendez, say something to that effect?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you recall? And did you hear this at the house?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, at the time, Craig and I were quite close, and I had mentioned to Erik why he hadn't been spending as much time with us at the house. And Mr. Menendez said that Craig Signorelli kid is not allowed in this house.
Oh,
So you were having a conversation with Erik about why Mr. Signorelli was no longer around.
With Mr. Menendez there.
And do you recall when that was?
No, I don't. It was sometime while they were living at the Calabasas house.
And to the best of your recollection, did the family move from the Calabasas house in the fall of 1988?
Yes, yes.
Was sometime before that?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point in the summer of 1989, in August of 1989, did you hear that Erik's parents had been killed?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you receive notice that, by some means, that there was going to be a memorial service?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you attend that memorial service?
Yes, ma'am.
Did
Craig
any other
Signorelli
members
didn't.
of your family attend the service?
Yes, ma'am.
Who else attended?
My mother, and I had a friend who was in town, and his father came with us as well, so the four of us went.
And was that friend's last name Jones?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Now, what's your mother's name?
Kathy Bulow-Cohen.
yeah. Craig Signorelli didn't go to the memorial.
And do you recall, Mr. Whalen, where the memorial service was held?
I believe the building was called something Screen Actors Guild. Maybe it was on Sunset Boulevard, as I remember.
And do you recall at some point, either before or after the memorial service, learning that Erik was about to travel somewhere?
It was when I walked in the door and I saw Erik for the first time in a while.
And did Erik indicate to you that he was going to be leaving Los Angeles?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did he indicate he would be going?
Back to New Jersey for what I thought was a funeral.
For the actual funeral?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he indicate whether he was going to stay in New Jersey or come back to the Los Angeles area?
He said he would be returning to Los Angeles.
And when he said that, did that provoke you to talk to your mother about something?
Yes, ma'am. My mother had offered for Erik to stay at my house for a couple weeks, just because she felt like if I was in that situation, she'd hope a friend of mine would do the same for me. So.
And did you make an offer to Erik at the memorial service that when he returned from New Jersey, he could stay at your house?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was his response to that offer?
He accepted. He said that would be great, but he didn't. He said he'd call me when he was coming back. He was going back for a few days, and didn't know the exact time he would be coming back.
And after the memorial service, did you spend some time with Erik at a hotel that he and some of his family members were staying at?
Yes, ma'am.
And during the time that you spent with Erik at the hotel, could you describe what his demeanor was like?
Somber, upset, crying, basically, sad. Sad would be the tone.
And was that true for was that true at the memorial service as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that somber and sad demeanor what you saw throughout the time that you were with him at the hotel after the memorial service?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you see Lyle Menendez at the hotel after the memorial service also?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there a point at which Lyle left and went to the airport?
Yes, we took him to the airport.
And who was with?
Erik and Lyle and Pete Jones Jr. and myself.
And do you recall what day that was that you took Lyle to the airport?
I believe that was the day of the memorial, which was the 25th of August.
Friday?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Erik leave the same day?
No, ma'am.
And did you know when it was that Erik was supposed to leave for New Jersey?
I believe it was the next day.
Did you take Erik to the airport also?
No, ma'am.
Did you return from the airport with Erik and Pete Jones Jr. to the Bel Air Hotel
Yes, ma'am.
after dropping off Lyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you receive a phone call or phone calls from Erik when he was in New Jersey?
To pick him up, yes, ma'am.
Okay, were arrangements made before he actually came back for you to pick him up?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall the day upon which you were supposed to pick him up?
I believe it was September 1st
And that would be September 1st.
of 1989.
Now, were you about to go, let's strike that. When did you graduate, Mr. Whalen, from Calabasas High School?
89, June of 89.
June of 89. And were you starting college in the fall of 89?
Yes, ma'am.
And where were you starting college that fall?
Santa Barbara City College.
And were you due to go to Santa Barbara to start attending college on a particular day?
September 5th.
And in fact, just to jump ahead, did you leave? Your family lives in Agoura.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you leave your family home in Agoura and go to Santa Barbara on September 5th?
Yes, that is correct.
Let's back up then to the previous Friday, September 1st, okay? On that day, were you supposed to do something before you went to pick Erik up at the airport?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were you supposed to do?
I was supposed to meet at the house on Elm Drive and meet a police officer there to go pick up Erik at the airport.
You mean a police officer or do you mean a private security?
A security guard, whoever was watching the house.
And did you go to the house and attempt to talk to the security guards?
Yes, ma'am.
And would they talk to you?
No, they told me to get away from the house and that I had no business being there.
And did that disturb you?
Very much so.
Did you then place a telephone call to your home and, without telling us what was said, talk to your mother?
Yes, ma'am.
And after talking to your mother, did you then proceed without a security guard to the airport?
That is correct.
And at the airport, did you meet Erik's plane?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you and Erik then go somewhere after the airport?
We went back to the Beverly Hills house on Elm Drive.
And did Erik tell you why he was going back to the house?
He needed to pick up some things. He wanted to get his messages, and he needed to meet somebody there.
And did he describe to you what sort of person he was going to meet there?
Nothing I remember right now. I just knew we had to meet somebody there, and he needed things to pick up at the house.
With respect to the person he needed to meet there, was there any reference made to the computer in the home?
Not at the time, not till we got to the house. So when I picked him up at the airport, there was no mention of that.
Okay. When you got to the house, did one of the security guards give Erik something?
He gave him a note.
And who purportedly wrote the note?
Lyle?
And did Erik have some kind of reaction? Well, first of all, did Erik look at the note?
Yes, he did.
And did he have some kind of reaction to the note?
Yes, ma'am. He was astonished that the note was from Lyle.
Okay. And did he explain to you what was astonishing him about the note?
Yes, he calls for Gibson. It's a state.
Well, you're not, it's being offered only for state of mind.
Well, you can approach and we'll discuss it.
Ooh.
Well, maybe I'll ask another question later. Did Erik comment about the handwriting in the note?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did he say about the handwriting? This is not being offered for truth, Your Honor.
Again,
Mr. Whalen, did Erik say something about the handwriting on this note?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he say?
They said the note was from Lyle, but he couldn't figure out how it could be from Lyle. He couldn't figure out the handwriting.
Did he say it didn't look like Lyle's handwriting?
Exactly.
Ooh.
And did that seem to alarm him?
Very much so. Both of us.
You got scared too?
Yeah, I couldn't figure out what was going on.
That's interesting.
Now, at some point, strike that. Did Erik check his message machine while he was at the house?
At that point, after we'd received the note that was supposedly written from Lyle, we went upstairs to check his answer machine and pick up a few things.
Okay. Now, do you then recall some person or people coming and being in his parents' bedroom where the computer was?
I remember Erik and I looking over a gentleman's shoulder while he was trying to do something with the computer. I wasn't that attentive, but I remember us both standing behind a gentleman working on the computer.
Okay.
And do you specifically remember the gentleman arriving or the gentleman going up into the bedroom? Do you remember those details?
The only thing that really sticks out in my head is Erik and I both standing behind him, looking over his shoulder, trying to work on the computer.
And this gentleman was seated and you and Erik were standing?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you remember at some point you left Erik standing behind the man and you went and sat down somewhere?
Yeah, I had a tennis ball laying around. I was just kind of sitting down on the bed.
And this was in his parents' room?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have a recollection of being on the bed with a tennis ball or playing with a tennis ball?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, after this period when this person was a man working on the computer.
sustained.
This person who was working on the computer, was it male or female?
It was a male.
At some point after you remember that person being in the room, was anything said about anything having been erased from the computer?
Erik was, on our ride home, we talked about it. He couldn't figure out what had happened on the computer. And I didn't know exact details at that time until we'd gotten back to my house.
All right. At some point, this person is there, and then at some point, this person leaves, the person working on the computer.
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point, do you and Erik leave the house in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, and we went out to my house.
In Agoura?
Yes, ma'am.
And on the ride out to your house, Erik tells you that what about
something was wrong with the will on the computer, and he couldn't figure out what had happened.
Did he say something was wrong, or did he say something was erased?
Something to that effect. I don't recall the exact words. Something was definitely wrong with the computer, with the will. I didn't remember exactly what it was.
And do you recall after Erik got to your house, do you recall his efforts to contact anyone?
Yes, right as soon as we walked in the door, he tried to get in contact with Lyle back east.
And do you recall him trying to call any other relatives besides Lyle?
His aunt, I believe.
Do you remember which aunt?
I do not.
Was that also a person back east?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall whether or not Erik connected with either his brother or his aunt at that point?
Not. I don't believe he got in contact with him until the next day.
Now, that evening, did Erik sleep over at your house?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's that Friday night, September 1st.
Yeah, my mother, my sister, and I had gone to dinner with him, and then we came back and went to sleep.
Okay. Before we get to the dinner, you're certain he slept at your house that Friday night?
Without a doubt.
And did he sleep at your house the next day, Saturday night?
That is correct.
And did he sleep at your house the next day, Sunday night?
That is correct.
And Monday night?
That is correct.
And then was it Tuesday that you went to school?
The 5th. I don't exactly remember what day. The 5th, I think, was a Tuesday.
But is it true that every day from the point you picked Erik up at the airport until you left for school, he slept at your house?
That is correct.
Now let's go back a little bit to the Beverly Hills house when the computer person was there. Was Craig Signorelli there?
No, ma'am.
Now, Mr. Whalen, your hair is sort of sandy colored. That be an accurate description of it now?
That is correct.
And what color are your eyes?
Green.
Light eyes?
Yes, ma'am.
And in September of 1989, were you still playing football?
I was still heavily working out. I had just finished my senior season. Yes.
And were you big?
Yes, ma'am. I mean,
Were you bigger in stature than Erik?
that is correct. Oh, yeah.
Now, do you remember, Mr. Whalen, whether or not the person who was working on the computer was accompanied by a woman?
I don't recall it. I just distinctly remember a gentleman working on the computer and Erik and I standing there. That's about what I remembered about it.
Okay, so you don't recall if there was a woman who came with him or if there wasn't a woman?
There could have been.
Memory's a funny thing. Like you would think that you would remember something like that. Like whether there was an entire person, like an entire like different kind of person that was there in the room with them. In the room where it happened. The room where it happened. Anyway. But that's just the way that memory works, right? Sometimes like you focus on certain details and you don't focus on others, and you can honestly not remember if an entire person was there or not. So there have been a couple indications in the chat about my earlier comment about the note from ostensibly from Lyle to Erik. What's interesting to me is that there's this suggestion that there may have been this note that was not actually written by Lyle to be passed to Erik. We don't know. We haven't heard yet what that note said. So we don't know what it was. I am thinking that we're going to have to wait until Erik's testimony to find that out, because the only way for anyone else to know what that note said was if they had actually read it. And it sounds from Casey Whalen's testimony so far that's not something that he was able to do. He didn't actually read the note, but he saw Erik read the note, and he saw his facial expression, and he heard Erik talk about having seen the note and what it meant and what he thought about it. So we're probably gonna have to wait until Erik's testimony to find out what actually was in that note. But it's interesting that we've got an indication that there may have been someone that was trying to feed some false information to Erik for some sort of a purpose. It could have been that the police were trying to trying to catch them in something, maybe plan some kind of a suggestion having to do with the deaths of their parents or something, to see if they could catch them in some kind of an admission by conduct, you could say, by if there's some sort of a suggestion that they should be acting in a certain way because of what Lyle is telling Erik about, or something along those lines. That's the suggestion that I am getting from this testimony so far. That's why I find this so interesting. So there could have been someone that was trying to catch them in something by feeding this note to the security guards, who did not want to see Casey Whalen anywhere near the house. They told him to go away and whatnot. Like, that was already, he said, some strange behavior. And then hearing about this note that Lyle was supposed to have handed or sent to Erik, not in his handwriting. So interesting. Okay. So let's continue. And this is already like, so I don't know if you remember Craig Signorelli's testimony, but remember, he also talked about seeing Erik and Lyle with the computer guy and his pregnant wife or something like that. And I can't remember if he remembered seeing the pregnant wife, but there was a pregnant wife who testified. Well, she was no longer pregnant when she testified, but she testified that she was pregnant at the time, and she went with him to the house while he was trying to do something on the computer having to do with the will. trying to find something. And Craig Signorelli also had testimony that he was there with the brothers trying to find this will or something. But now we're hearing that Casey Whalen is saying he was there. And if you remember what Craig Signorelli looked like, they're fairly they're fairly similar in the way that they look, right? Like I could see someone, you know, this witness here doesn't remember whether or not there was a woman in the room. Um, so keeping that in mind, I can see how somebody could confuse Casey Whalen for Craig Signorelli as well. But anyway, so already we're seeing this testimony sort of parallel Craig Signorelli's testimony in some strange ways. Maybe there were multiple times when this computer guy was at the house. Maybe Erik and Lyle had Craig Signorelli over one time when the computer guy was there, and maybe they had Casey Whalen over another time when the computer guy was there. If this was some sort of nefarious plot for, killing their parents, I don't know why they would invite so many friends over when they've got this computer guy over, but then they would talk about killing, uh, what's his name? Dr. Oziel, for spilling their guts to him. I just, anyway, it's just, it's granted they're young guys. They could totally just be making dumb mistakes if they had this whole plot, but it seems a little strange to me. Okay, anyway, let's continue.
Now, at some point before you left for school on September 5th, did you see Craig Signorelli at your house?
Yes.
And what did he do when he came to your house?
Well, the three of us went out and did something one night, and I think he and Erik for a couple hours one night might have gone out and done something. But I saw him maybe 2 or 3 times before I left their school tops.
But on all of those days, Erik slept at your house.
That is correct.
Now, on October 3rd, 1990, after Erik was arrested, did you have a conversation with Detective Zoller of the Beverly Hills Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
And did Detective Zoller ask you in the course of that interview whether or not during the time you were with Erik, he had ever discussed his parents' killing with you?
Yes, he did ask me that question.
And did you relate to Detective Zoller a statement that you heard Erik make?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was Erik when he made the statement that you related to Detective Zoller?
We were at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
The Beverly Hills or the Bel Air?
The Bel Air Hotel, I'm sorry.
And was this the night after the memorial service?
I believe it was the night of.
The night of the memorial service?
Yes.
And who were you with besides Erik?
Andy Pierce, I believe Robin Rosenblum was there, and Pete Jones, my friend who was in town.
Okay. Now, what was the statement that you told Detective Zoller you had heard Erik say?
Well, there were 4 or 5 of us sitting around, and I overheard him say something to the fact that if I found who killed my parents, I'd have to go to jail because I would kill them.
Now, was that said directly to you, or was it said to the group, or was it said to someone else?
It was said to somebody else. I kind of overheard it because there were 4 or 5 of us all kind of sitting around.
And before you heard Erik say that, was he engaged in a conversation with someone else?
Yes, and I was in my own.
And you were talking to someone else as well?
That is correct.
And did you hear what preceded Erik making that statement? Did you hear what someone else said to him?
No, I didn't.
And can you remember now who it was Erik was talking to? Which of the group?
No, I don't. I don't remember.
And was that the only statement that you ever overheard Erik make about the killing of his parents?
That is correct.
Now, was there a point just before you graduated? I'll strike that. Was there a point when you and Erik became rather close friends?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And during the time that you were close friends, did Erik ever express to you a desire on his part to play some other sport besides tennis?
Yeah, he wanted to play football.
And did he ever play football?
No, he did not.
And do you know why he didn't?
His parents wouldn't let him.
And let me show you a book. Your Honor, I don't want to mark the original because its owner would like it back, but we've made a copy of Counsel. Will you stick it with it? You can use the copy. Yes. If I might approach you. Mr. Whalen, do you recognize this book?
Yeah, that's my yearbook.
That's your yearbook from Calabasas High School?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recognize this inscription inside the front cover?
Yes, ma'am.
And who wrote that inside the cover of your book?
Erik did.
And in that inscription, does Erik make reference to the fact that his parents would not allow him to play football?
Yes, ma'am.
And does he say, in fact, parents can be that way?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you consider that when Erik wrote that in your book to be a complaint on his part about his parents?
Oh, without a doubt. Well, he complained about it to me before even writing it in the book about not being able to play.
And was that the only topic about which Erik ever complained to you about his parents?
That I can remember, yes.
Someone will tell me what the next number is. 211. 211. And I'm marking the copy of the page of that book as 211. In signing his name to the inside of the yearbook, the copy is still in front of you. Did he use 3 different names, basically?
Yes, ma'am.
Was one of them E-Man?
That's correct.
Was that a nickname you knew Erik by?
Yes, ma'am.
Was one of them, in quotes, Shepherd?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that a nickname you knew Erik by?
Yes, ma'am.
And was the third signature his name, Erik Menendez?
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you have a nickname also, besides Casey?
Yes, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, did Craig Signorelli have a nickname also?
Yes, ma'am.
What was Craig Signorelli's nickname?
The wizard.
That was Craig's or yours?
Oh no, I was the wizard. Craig was the king.
All right, so Craig was nicknamed King.
Yes, ma'am.
You were nicknamed Wizard.
Yes, ma'am.
And Erik was nicknamed Shepherd.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, was there a time?
I mean, how many people think that their high school, nicknames with their buddies are ever going to become something that becomes part of like a nationally viewed murder trial? They're such nerdy nicknames too. It's so funny. Like, oh yeah, Erik, we're gonna call you the Shepherd, and Craig Signorelli, we're gonna call you the King, and yeah, Casey Whalen, we're gonna call you the Wizard. I mean, of course, I say this as somebody who actively plays Dungeons and Dragons on YouTube, but this is it's funny. It's funny in this, especially in this kind of a context, because it's like, it's obviously a very serious proceeding. And they're like, okay. And so what was Craig Signorelli's nickname? He was the King. And Mr. Whalen, what was your high school nickname? I was the Wizard. Like, how did these come about? And like what was involved? Like, what was involved in this? Like, was it like some night that they were just like, all right, like it's like, Christmas time, and Craig Signorelli is like, I'm gonna be like one of the 3 wise men, like, I'm gonna be the king, and Erik, you're gonna be the little shepherd boy. It's just so silly. Like, this poor guy having to reveal it, and then he probably goes back to his regular life, right? And he's dating around, and some woman recognizes him and is like, "Oh yeah, weren't you a witness in the Menendez trial?" Like, "Yeah, oh, are you the wizard?" Okay. Maybe they'll go into the backstory. We'll see. It's just so silly.
Time when Erik told you that you should be called king.
Yes, when he left for Beverly Hills.
And did you have a conversation with Craig Signorelli where he indicated that he knew you had been given his nickname?
Yes, ma'am.
Wait a second. Now we're getting into drama about these nicknames. Erik decides, no, Craig, like this is almost like this is like mini Mean Girls shit right here. Like, Eric's like, no, Craig shouldn't be the king. Casey should be the king. Casey, as the shepherd, I anoint you the king. It's so funny.
Was did Craig Signorelli ever, excuse me?
Sustain the answers.
I know, I'm going to start over, see if I can keep one up there. Did you have a conversation with Craig Signorelli in which he demonstrated jealousy of you?
Sustain.
Well, I'd like to be heard. Okay.
Are we going to hear about the jealousy?
Was there some rivalry between yourself and Craig for the friendship of Erik? At least in Craig's mind.
Yes, ma'am. Well, especially when I got the name King, or we switched names when Erik thought I should be dubbed that name. There was maybe a little, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you were renamed King, Craig.
It's so stupid. High school boys. Like the anointing of Casey as the king in their group of friends means that Casey then became like very very competitive. It's just so silly. It's so high school can be so silly.
Craig was upset.
Yes, ma'am.
This was some evidence that Erik preferred your friendship to his.
Maybe a little. Yes, ma'am.
That's how.
Sustain the answers.
Yeah,
Is
it's a
this
little
how
speculative.
Mr. Signorelli behaved?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I had asked you earlier if you were familiar. You were familiar. Strike that. You had told us earlier that you were familiar with Mr. Signorelli for many years, and you knew, I take it, many people who also knew him.
Yes, ma'am.
And over the years of knowing him and seeing him interact with other people, did you form some opinion about his honesty?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that opinion?
I questioned a few things that he had been.
Let me make this clear when you're giving an opinion.
Okay.
In your opinion, is Craig Signorelli an honest young man or not an honest young man?
Not an honest young man.
Ooh.
Now, did Craig Signorelli, after the death of Jose and Kitty Menendez, did he tell you anything about making money or selling rights to the Menendez story?
Yes, he said he'd sold the rights to the story to his lawyer.
And did he tell you how much he sold it for?
I remember him mentioning something like he could make millions, or something to that effect. Something a lot of money.
Great.
And do you know if
and just a reminder, so she asked him about Craig Signorelli's character. Is he an honest young man or is he not an honest young man? And that's because every single witness that testifies, their character as to their honesty, their reliability, their God, what's the word for it? I'm totally brain farting right now. But their propensity for honesty, are they an honest person or not? Are they the kind of person that is going to be telling the truth in your opinion? That is the kind of thing that a lay witness can give their opinion on another witness, because character is always at issue for any witness. So that's why we had Pamela Lacossi, the the assistant of, some other business partner of Dr. Oziel. She came in to testify that Dr. Oziel is a scumbag and a liar and a snake and a cheat. And he's the kind of person will turn on you, in a second. So, she basically was brought in just for that purpose, to tell the jury that. So that's like one of the few places where a lay witness can give an opinion is as to the character of some other witness. Character as to honesty, I should say. Very, very limited. Outside of that, it's they're not allowed. But anyway, so this is, he was friends with Craig Signorelli since middle school, or at least knew him since middle school, and very swiftly he's like, nope, not on his dude. Okay.
Know if did he make this statement to you before or after Erik was arrested?
I believe it was before.
Now, Mr. Whalen, since the time that Erik was arrested, you visited him in the jail, have you not?
Yes, ma'am.
And on how many occasions have you visited him?
3 or 4.
And the testimony that you've given us here today, is that based on your memory?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you interviewed, in addition to the interview that you gave to the Beverly Hills Police in October of 1990, were you also interviewed in November of 1990 by the defense investigator, Miss Erdely?
Yes, ma'am.
Shireen, exactly right.
Cross-examination.
All right, so now we've got cross-examination, I believe. So yes, and he is definitely a rebuttal
Whalen,
witness to Craig Signorelli, but
you
also
indicated
he's got his
that,
own stuff
you
to
went to
testify
pick
to.
up Erik Menendez on the 1st of September.
Yes, sir.
What car did you drive?
I drove my mother's car.
Okay. And you had received a call from Erik Menendez before going to the airport.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
You had been told.
Did you see what's her name, the attorney here in the blue? I keep forgetting her name. She, at that mistake, she smiled, kind of joked like, ha, he called you a woman. Just that little mistake. But just before we really get into the cross-examination, expect this cross-examination to be really tough, because I anticipate he's going to be looking at him as almost like a co-conspirator, like someone who's going to try to cover for his friend. We're probably going to take on that kind of like lawyer man attitude of like you are not to be trusted because you're friends with the defendant, and you have some loyalties and whatnot. So yeah, anyway.
Where the airline and where to pick him up?
Yes, sir.
Where did you receive the call? Was it at home?
Yes, sir.
Now, you indicated that you went to the Beverly Hills home first. You had to pick up or meet with a security guard.
Yes, sir.
Had you ever been to 722 North Elm?
Yes, sir.
How many times had you been there previous to that date?
5 times.
Now, prior to learning of the murders of the Menendezes, you had not seen Erik Menendez for some 2 months. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, when you received this call from Erik Menendez telling you where to go, and you got into your mother's car and you went to Elm, their home on Elm Street, who was there?
A few security guards. I guess they were not police officers inside.
What time was it that you arrived?
I don't recall.
Was it morning or was it night?
Afternoonish, probably noontime, I'd say.
Do you recall how many guards were there?
2 to 3. I remember specifically 2.
Did they have uniforms on?
Yes, sir.
Now, at some point, you were told to just leave. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you said that you called your home.
Yes, sir.
Where did you call from?
I went, the only place I could find a public phone was all the way back to Sunset and down at a gas station a ways.
Public phones. That's the first reference we've had to public phones. Crazy. We are in the 90s. This is very much the 90s. It's so funny because I didn't even think about that because, cell phones have been so a part of our lives for how long now. But there you go. We've got add that to your bingo checklist.
After calling your mother, you then went to the airport.
Yes, sir.
Which airport did you go to?
LAX.
And which airline did you go to?
I don't recall.
And you were the only person in the car.
Yes, sir.
At some point, you went to an airline and you found Erik Menendez. Is that right?
It was in the baggage claim.
And after you met up with Erik Menendez, what did you do?
We went back to Elm. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, you drove back to Elm.
Yes, sir.
And what time was this?
We've already gone through all this.
Well, I believe I left an hour early to get to his house, so probably 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Now, when you got there at 1 or 2, were the same guards there?
I don't recall. I seem to remember one had at least not been the same. They'd changed at least 1 guard.
Did you enter into the house
Yes, sir.
with Erik Menendez?
Yes, sir.
Where did you go?
Well, we tried to go in through the front, but the wrought iron gates, we were about ready to climb over, and that way they wouldn't let us in, so we went around through the back, through the alleyway, up through the house, by the pool, and then in the doors there.
You went through the back gate.
Yes, sir.
Did the guards come to you when you came through the gate?
They were actually standing in the hallway, and we approached them. I mean, they couldn't believe how we got in the house, but we'd gotten in that way.
Which doors did you enter into the house?
I believe it was the side doors that led into the family room there that were.
The French doors?
Yes, sir.
Were they still broken?
Yeah, from what I remember parts of the door being missing. Or
When you went into the family room, was it your understanding that is where the killings took place?
No, I'm gonna check this is beyond the scope of your relative.
You can answer the question.
yes, sir.
Was there still blood on the walls?
Not that I didn't take a good look at it. There was nothing. It was basically cleaned out the middle of the family room. I didn't take a good look.
The bodies were still there.
At some
After the
point,
memorial.
did Erik Menendez go up to his bedroom?
Yes, I went with him.
And you went with him?
Yes, sir.
And what happened?
We were checking his messages.
Does he have his own phone?
Yes, I believe
Or
he
did
did.
he at that time?
Yes, sir.
Now, after checking his messages, did you actually sit there and listen to the messages?
Yes, a few of them. Yes, sir.
So you were with him at all times.
Yes, while we were upstairs. Yes, sir.
Did he collect some clothes?
Yes, I believe a few. Nothing major. We had already had the bulk of his things in the car.
So he kept his suitcases in your car.
Yeah, we didn't bring them into the house when we went in. No.
At some point, did the doorbell ring when you were upstairs?
I remember being upstairs and needing to meet somebody at the foot of the stairs. I mean,
What do you mean foot of the stairs?
well, his room was upstairs, and we were upstairs, and somebody said, "Come downstairs." We met somebody at the foot of the stairs and went back to his parents' room, up to his parents' room.
So you and Erik came down the stairs and somebody was already in the house at the base of the stairs.
With the security guards, yes, that is correct.
Do you recall what this person looked like?
I just remember a male,
What race?
well, white. He's
How tall?
no idea. I just remember a white male we met and then went right upstairs.
Remember what color hair he had?
No, sir, I do not.
Remember what color eyes he had?
No, sir.
Remember what he was wearing?
No, sir.
Now, he was with the security guards, the uniformed guards.
Yes, sir.
And at that point, what happened?
We went up into the parents' room.
When you say we, who are you talking about?
Erik, myself, and the computer man.
And did you enter into a room upstairs?
Yes, sir.
Which room?
The parents' room.
And what did you see?
There was a bed there. There were kind of clothes all over the ground, and against what would be, I guess, the right wall. After you come in and look at the room, there's the computer is there. This is what I remember from what was in the
As you
room.
enter the room, the computer is on the right wall. Is that correct?
Yes, as I remember.
So it would be to your right as you enter into the room.
Yes, sir.
Was it up against that right wall?
As I remember, yes, sir.
And you were actually watching as this person was working on the computer?
Yes, I had a tennis ball. I was kind of milling around. I remember at one point, Erik and I just the man couldn't figure out what was going on with the computer, and Erik and I were watching him. And then I went back to just doing whatever I was doing.
And what were you doing?
Just milling around. I wasn't doing anything in particular.
Were you milling around in the mother and father's bedroom?
Yeah, I didn't leave the room. I was a few feet away. I just had a tennis ball. I wasn't doing a whole lot.
How long was this gentleman there?
I don't recall the duration of time that he was there. I just remember the actual event of us being in the room with the computer. I don't remember the exact amount of time.
And you don't remember anyone else being there with you?
No, sir, I do not.
Now, the whole time that this man was working on this computer, were you actually in the bedroom,
Yes, sir.
just playing with this tennis ball
Yes, sir.
the whole time?
Not the whole time while they're there. Then I ended up leaving and going downstairs to the car.
At
Sir,
what
do you
point
have a
did do that?
fascination with tennis balls?
I don't remember. It was where they were basically at the end, because Erik came out about 4 minutes later to meet me at the car, and we left.
So at some point, you went out to your car, and a few minutes later, Erik Menendez came out.
Yes, sir.
Were there ever any calls made while you were there in the bedroom?
Not that I recall, sir.
Did you ever show this man around the house?
Not that I recall.
What do you recall?
I remember being in the house, in his room, checking messages, meeting somebody at the foot of the stairs, being in the parents' bedroom, looking over somebody's shoulder on the computer while somebody worked on the computer. Erik couldn't believe what was going on. I went down the car, got the car ready. We left, and we went home.
What is your best estimate of how long the computer man was there?
Half an hour, 45 minutes. Estimate.
Do you remember ever seeing the man in any other part of the house besides being in the location that you saw him, the parents' bedroom, after coming up the stairs?
No, I don't recall.
And you were only out of Erik Menendez's presence for a couple of minutes while you went out to the car. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes, sir, from what I remember.
Now, when you were playing with this tennis ball, where physically were you with respect to this man that's working on the computer on the right side of the room?
At the foot of the bed, maybe 5-10 feet away.
You weren't actually on the bed?
I sat down for a second, but I mean, while I was up there, I looked over his shoulder a few times to figure out what they were doing, and I had a tennis ball, and I was just walking around the room. I didn't do anything in particular.
While you were walking around, did you pace around the room?
I wasn't pacing. I was just waiting for them to get done what he needed to get done.
Did Erik Menendez appear to be quite interested in what was going on with that computer?
Yes, sir.
Did he stand there at all times while this man was working on the computer?
From what I remember, yes, sir.
Was he looking over this man's shoulder the entire time?
From what I remember, for most of it, yes, sir.
And you remember talking to the Beverly Hills detectives in October of 1990, on October 3rd.
Yes, sir.
You never mentioned anything about a computer person on that date, did you?
Excuse me, sir?
You never mentioned anything about a computer person on that date.
No, sir. No, I did not.
In fact, you had indicated on that date, did you not, sir, on October 3rd, 1990, that Erik had asked you to be a character witness for him, and you were due to visit him in jail to further discuss things with him.
There we
Remember
go.
that?
There it is.
Yes, sir. Well, that was kind of taken out of context. I had come down.
Is that what you said?
Yet I had said that, Erik, do you need any help? Do you need me to be a character witness? And he said, I don't know. Yeah, I might.
See, I knew it. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. They were bound to try to paint this witness as someone who is, ooh, you're too close to the defendant. You're too good of friends with the defendant. Therefore, jury cannot trust you.
Okay, the statement that you made on October 3rd, 1990, was that Erik had asked you.
The form of the question was, since the witness is saying that the report
All
is
right,
not
let's
accurate.
not argue it.
Yeah, approach.
Let me hear
Okay.
the question first.
Mr. Whalen, would it refresh your present recollection to take a look at the report that you gave to the Beverly Hills homicide detectives on October 3rd, 1990?
There's no foundation in lack of recollection.
Overall.
I've seen it. I remember it says that Erik had asked me to be a character witness, which was actually an indirectly he did ask me because I offered and he said, yeah. So I took it as, yeah, he asked me to be a character witness.
And in fact, you had a meeting with him, or you indicated on October 3rd, 1990, that you were going to meet with Erik Menendez in jail to discuss what you testified to. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I mean, from what I remember. Yes, sir.
Now, did you have some kind of a rivalry with Craig Signorelli that you wanted to be Erik Menendez's best friend?
I believe Craig and I at different times thought we were closer to Erik than the other was. So that could be accurate. Yes, sir.
And you wanted to be known as Erik's best friend?
Wasn't.
And you would go so far as to lie for him in court when he's on trial for murder. That's what he's trying to suggest here.
And a priority with me, no, but I felt like when he left for Beverly Hills that Erik and I were closer than Craig and he were at the time. So
that was important for you to feel that you were closer to Erik Menendez than Craig was?
No, that wasn't important to me. It was important to me that Erik and I were close and Craig and I have a totally different relationship. So no, I mean, it was important that Erik and I were still close while he left because I felt he was a good friend of mine.
And being a good friend, you went to visit him in jail and talked about the case? That'd be fair to say?
No, not really, because I was warned before that whatever we would talk about would be taped. So actually, I don't think we talked about much of it at all. And if I had any questions, I might have written them down and that was it. So I don't think we talked about much of it. He asked what I was doing with my life and I asked him how he was doing. That was probably about what we talked about.
Okay, let's get back to if you had something, perhaps.
I'm sorry. Nihilist Craig. Yes, exactly. You wanted to be the king, didn't you? You weren't content with being the wizard. How desperately did you want to be the king? Are you the king now? It's so true. Liar! You're a liar in court for the shepherd.
Perhaps you didn't want people to know about. You'd write it on a piece of paper while you were visiting. Is that correct?
The question I'd written down was, do you want me to be a character witness? Because I didn't know if that was a good question to ask on tape.
Okay. And did you hold up that message to Erik Menendez?
Yes, sir.
Did he answer audibly or did he write his answer out to you?
It was more or less what I just said that, oh, yeah, well, I need you. I don't know. Yeah, I might need you to be a character witness. Something to that effect.
He said that himself. He didn't write it out.
From what I remember, it was kind of like he shrugged it off as he was on the phone. Well, yeah, maybe, or something like that.
How many times had you visited Erik Menendez prior to when the Beverly Hills homicide detectives interviewed you on October 3rd, 1990?
It might have been twice that Memorial Day, and if it wasn't that Memorial Day, then I hadn't seen him at all. I'd seen him over Memorial Weekend 2 days in a row. I'd gone down there, and I don't recall if it was of 90 or of 91, so I don't recall, sir.
Well, if the interview took place on October 3rd of 1990, you would have visited with Erik Menendez
that May.
Previous Memorial.
Yeah, that would have been the 2 days.
And how many times was that?
Twice. Back-to-back days.
And I believe you indicated that you had visited him several times over the course of the pendency of this case. Is that right?
I said 3 or 4 times.
Okay, so you went perhaps twice after you gave the detectives the information on October 3rd, 1990?
Definitely once, and there might have been another time in there.
Now, you indicated that you found out that Mr. and Mrs. Menendez had been murdered sometime in August of 1989.
Yeah, my family was sitting around and saw it on TV. I'd walked in on it.
And you went to the memorial service, correct?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
that
sir.
was on a Friday.
The 25th, yes, sir.
And this was at the Screen Actors Guild. Is that what you said?
I believe that's the name of
Did you go to prove your friendship to Erik, that you are the better friend than Craig, because you knew that Craig wasn't going to go to the memorial, so you decided to sneak in and reclaim best friendship with Erik to make sure that you could hold on to the throne as the king? Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I couldn't help myself. Let's go.
name of the building. He was on Sunset Boulevard.
Did Erik Menendez speak at this memorial service?
Yes, he and his brother did.
Did he talk about murdering his parents?
Now, you indicated that after the memorial service that you went to the hotel, the Bel Air Hotel.
Yes, sir.
And what did you do at the hotel? Did you hang around with Erik Menendez and two other people you indicated?
Yeah, Robin Rosenblum and Andy Pierce were there as well. Yes.
What did you do after the memorial service with Erik Menendez?
We sat. We talked a little bit about what was going on, what he needed to do back in New Jersey. We sat in a jacuzzi. It was outside, and talked about what we were going to do. I mean, what he needed to do while he was back in New Jersey. That was about the duration of the night. I had a little something to eat. Took Lyle to the airport. That was basically what I did while I was there.
Now, you indicated that Erik Menendez had made a statement that you overheard at the memorial service. Is that correct?
Sustained.
Ooh, a sustained objection for the defense.
Did you hear Erik Menendez say anything with regard to the people who had killed his parents?
Yes, that was what I talked about earlier at the Bel Air Hotel.
Okay. And what is it that he said?
Something to the effect of, if I find out who killed my parents, I'm going to have to go to jail because I'm going to kill them.
Now, had you seen Erik Menendez with his parents over the course of this year that you knew Erik Menendez?
Yes, sir.
Your 11th grade year?
Yes, sir.
Had you seen the parents come to his tennis matches?
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Did you see how supportive
What
his parents
exactly
were?
did you see about that relationship?
Overall.
Could you restate the question?
Yes, you indicated that you saw Mr. and Mrs. Menendez go to tennis matches that Erik Menendez had.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
And what did you see about the relationship between his parents and Erik Menendez?
Well, they went to most, and his mother went to all of his tennis matches. His father would go when he could. His father paced back and forth, and his mother sat and watched most of the time.
How would you characterize Erik Menendez's relationship with his mother during that period of time that you knew him?
From what I knew, it was good.
Now, prior to October 3rd, 1990.
So I
You
will say, it would be better for the defense if this witness could testify. Yeah, he told me that he was abused. He told me that he was under immense pressure from his parents to succeed, and et cetera, et cetera, and that he was always considered the black sheep of the two children, because Lyle was the golden boy, and Erik was the one that they just were like, whatever, you're a failure and you're always going to be a failure, and oh look, you screwed up yet again, surprise, surprise, that kind of thing that his parents seem to have done. So it definitely, I'm not gonna lie, it would be better for the defense if Casey would be testifying to, yeah, he complained about his parents all the time. Yeah, he complained about the fact that he felt so much pressure from them. Yeah, he complained that his childhood was awful. But the fact is that when it comes to these kinds of matters, I mean, maybe they were abused, maybe they weren't. I'm fairly convinced that they were. If you have someone that is abused, that grows up in that kind of a household, it could be the kind of thing that they don't necessarily want to share with people because of feelings of, shame, feelings of, privacy of your family. Also, it could be the fact that it's been normalized for that person. Like when you grow up in a certain environment, you might feel like things are that's normal, that people go through that parents are like that with all of their kids, especially considering how much Erik and Lyle did not get to socialize with other kids as children, right? Like there was a lot of testimony that when they were in New Jersey, they were not going to other kids' birthday parties. They were not going to other social events outside of their family gatherings. And even then they were very limited because they would be there for Thanksgiving dinner and like scarf down food, and then Jose would like snap at everyone and go, "Okay, we're going." So it's like if you don't have that many touch points outside of school, in which case, they were also kind of loners at school. Um, you might not have enough to really gain an understanding of what's normal versus not normal in terms of how they grew up. It might not be until like those college years when they're really away that they realize just how messed up things were. So, it is better for the defense though if there is, for credibility of that accusation, to have said something to people. Now, there is obviously, we've heard testimony from their cousin Diane that Lyle did tell her that Jose used to touch him inappropriately. But the more we can see that corroborated from other independent people that aren't talking to one another, that don't even know one another, the better. But
You had spoken to Craig Signorelli, correct?
Yes, sir.
About the killings of Mr. and Mrs. Menendez.
Yes, sir.
Did
I'm
he?
going to object to that as calling for hearsay.
At this point, the question has just been asked without the content. The objection is overruled. The answer will stand.
You also indicated that while Erik Menendez was staying at your house, that Craig Signorelli would come by. Is that correct?
Yes, he'd come over a couple times. Yes, sir. That's correct.
He'd come over a couple times?
2 or 3 times. I don't recall the exact number, but it was a couple of times.
Do you recall telling the detectives from Beverly Hills that while Erik stayed at your house, that Erik spent a lot of time with Craig Signorelli?
That was after I left. He stayed at my house for another 5 or 7 days after I left for school. So, and my mother had told me that they'd been spending a lot of time together. So that would be an accurate statement. Yes, sir.
Were you upset at that?
No, it didn't bother me. I mean, I was off at school. I was in a new element.
Now, these days that Erik Menendez was with you, you say September 1st being the first day, was he with you at all times during that period of time when you were at home and before you left for Santa Barbara City College?
Not at all times. No, sir.
Okay. How, for example, the first day, September 1st, did he spend the entire evening with you?
Yes, sir. Because we'd gotten home after we'd gotten everything at the house. We went to dinner with my sister, my mom, and Erik and myself. And then we kind of laid low that night and went to bed. So that night, yes, I believe, as I recall, that we spent the whole night. He was there the whole night.
Okay. When you were at the Beverly Hills home, was Lyle Menendez there?
No, sir.
Was it your understanding that Lyle Menendez was back east in New Jersey at that time?
My understanding, yes, sir.
Now, you said that you went to dinner that night, the 1st of September.
Yes, sir.
And Erik Menendez slept over your house?
Yes, sir.
Where did he sleep?
Next to my bed. We made up a bed for him right there.
Just the two of you in your bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Now, the next day, what happened?
I don't recall. It was 4 years ago. I mean, I remember him being there for most of the time. I don't recall actual events.
You don't remember spending the whole day on the 2nd with him?
No, sir.
How about the 3rd?
I don't remember spending the whole day with him. No, sir. I don't remember the exact day. I was getting ready to go to school. I was out buying things, doing things. So I don't recall.
So when you were out buying things, would Erik Menendez be doing other things? He wasn't with you all the time, in other words.
No, he wasn't with me all the time. Everywhere I went, no, sir.
When you went shopping for your trip to Santa Barbara City College, did he go with you?
Sometimes he might have gone a few times. I know he didn't go with us every time. I don't recall the exact events.
So you were pretty busy.
Somewhat. I mean, I still always made time to hang around and do a whole lot of nothing. So, I mean.
How about the 4th? You remember what happened?
I don't recall exact events. No, I don't remember what happened exactly.
So when you were off doing your own thing, you don't know what Erik Menendez was doing. That'd be fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Now, did Erik Menendez have a car?
Yes, sir.
And what kind of car did he have during that period of time?
His escort?
And were there other cars at the house in Beverly Hills that day that you went?
I don't recall that. I remember. I don't remember exactly what cars were there.
How was Erik Menendez getting around during this period of time? Was he driving his car?
Yeah, he had his escort, which we took out to my house as well.
So the day that you brought Erik Menendez back on the 1st of September, Erik Menendez drove his own car to your house.
From what I remember, him having his car at my house. I don't remember the exact events. I remember him having his escort with him at my house.
When do you recall that taking place?
I just said I don't recall. I don't remember exactly when. I remember him having his escort at my house during that week so he could get around. And when I was out doing my things, he wasn't just stuck there. So I don't recall.
During the evenings, would you ever go out with friends?
Yes,
During
sir.
this period of time,
Yes.
September 1st through.
Yes, sir.
And Erik Menendez didn't always go with you to be with your friends. Is that fair to say?
That is correct.
So you don't know where he was during some of these nights.
No, sir. I mean, maybe a night or two. He did his own thing. I know a couple nights we did things together. So, but I know a couple nights I did my own thing. So that's accurate.
By the way, Kit Kat, thank you so much for gifting One Legal Bites membership. So kind of you again. Lynn S., you've been gifted a membership by Kit Kat. So welcome to Bite Club. This Friday, we will be having a members only live stream at the usual time. So casual members only live stream this week. I hope you can make it for it. So, and once again, Kit Kat, thank you so much.
At some point, getting back to Craig Signorelli, at some point, did you have a discussion with Craig Signorelli about the killings of Mr. and Mrs. Menendez? Sometime.
This was asked and answered. I made a hearsay.
Did you wish to be heard?
Yes.
Okay, you may approach. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short break. As far as you're concerned, I want to discuss something a little more fully with the lawyers. If you would just go into the jury room, don't discuss the matter, and we'll have you out in just a couple minutes. All right, Mr. Kuriyama, you may proceed.
Mr. Whalen, you indicated in your report.
Well, I'm going to object to the form of the question. He didn't write a report.
All right, just rephrase the question.
Did you make the statement to the detectives, Mr. Whalen, on October 3rd, 1990, that the only time that you had heard that Erik admitted killing his parents was from Craig Signorelli, who said that Erik had told him that he and Lyle had killed their parents?
Yes, sir. I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
And Erik Menendez told you, or Craig Signorelli told you that that's what Erik Menendez had told him?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just a little bit of a note. So we're going into sorry, 1 second. So this is going to be just like a 5 or 6 minute sort of back and forth on testimony. So the jury is out of the room right now. They are doing some voir dire on a particular area for whether or so that the judge can determine whether or not this witness can testify to this in front of the jury. So they're sort of asking the questions, exploring the territory, and then the judge is going to decide if it's proper. So jury is not in the courtroom right now, and they are not hearing any of this. And that's why, like, you've got usually you can tell in this courtroom because the attorneys are all sitting down when they are asking questions and talking to the judge and whatnot.
Sir,
When was that?
I don't recall because he was running around town telling not just myself, but anybody who wanted to listen. I know
Oh,
he
sorry, it's not like 5 or 6 minutes. It's gonna be a good 15 minutes.
told a few people that, so it wasn't just me that he took aside to tell me that. He told more than a few people that.
You don't recall when, Mr. President?
No,
It
sir.
was sometime before October 3rd, 1990.
Yes, sir.
When you saw Craig Signorelli in early September
Of 89.
89, did you have a conversation with him about this at that time?
It could have been. I don't recall when we had a conversation about it because we both went up to Santa Barbara. He came up a couple weeks later because he was going to UCSB, and they started about 3 weeks later. And then we ended up spending a lot of time together when we were up there together. So I don't know when he told me that, but during that whole first semester until I left school in January that year, I'd seen Craig a lot.
So it could have been in September, the early part of September 1989, that Craig had told you that Erik had told him that he and his brother had killed their parents?
It could have been.
You have no recollection of when that occurred?
It could have-
When it occurred before October 3rd of 1990?
Of 90, yeah, but I was with him a whole semester up there, so at any time between September and January.
And you had indicated that you had visited Erik Menendez 1 or 2 times prior to visiting him.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. That's not what this 402 was for.
All right, I assume you're proceeding to develop issues relating to this.
Yes,
All right, objection overruled.
that you had visited with Erik Menendez before you were to visit him in mid-October. Is that correct?
I was saying that I was going to hope to get to see him in the near future when I was home, but I'd seen him twice that Memorial weekend. So
When you went to see Erik Menendez in jail, as you indicated, you thought it was 2 days during the Memorial Day long weekend in 1990.
from what I remember, yes, sir.
Did you know that Craig Signorelli already told you?
Yes, because that was the time I'd already spent with him in Santa Barbara. So yes, sir.
When you visited him in mid-October, you already knew from Craig Signorelli that
Counsel is misstating the testimony. There's been no visit in mid-October.
Yeah, I never went and saw him in mid-October.
So-
I was hoping to get to see him in mid-October.
All right, you indicated that Mr. Signorelli told you that he could make money off of this story, is that right?
Yes, sir. He said he.
When did he say that?
I don't recall. It was probably during that same amount of time when I was in Santa Barbara. 'Cause that's when we spent most of the time that Craig and I spent together. It was during that time when we were both in Santa Barbara.
And when was it that he told you that Erik Menendez had admitted killing his parents?
During that same time period, and I don't recall when.
What is
Sometime
it?
between September and January.
Same conversation or different conversation?
I don't recall. It could have been the same one. It could have been 2 different ones.
Which was said first?
I don't recall. I can't make an assessment of that. I don't remember. I just remember being told both.
All right, anything else?
Oh, no.
Have you completed your examination, Mr. Freeman?
on October 3rd, 1990, you never told the police that you had spoken to Craig Signorelli and he said he was going to make money, did you?
I don't think I was asked that question. I mean, no,
You
Your
were
Honor, I'm
not,
going to object to that. That's not part of what this 402 was for.
No, that's part of it.
you never made that statement to the police when they visited with you on October 3rd.
no, sir. I knew it, but I did not make that statement. I guess. I mean, that's not in there.
Did Mr. Signorelli give you any details of what he said Erik Menendez had told him?
No, sir.
Did he say where it was that Erik Menendez had told him these things?
No, sir.
Did he say anything at all about the specifics of the killing of the parents?
Not that I recall. No, sir.
Did you ask him?
No, I don't think I did. I was more or less taken back. Not that I remember. I don't remember.
You don't remember asking him, or you don't remember him saying?
I don't remember him saying and or asking.
Was there anyone else present besides you and Mr. Signorelli when this was said?
There could have been. I don't remember.
And you never explored it further with Mr. Signorelli?
Not that I remember.
And had you heard it from Mr. Signorelli first, or from other people saying that Mr. Signorelli was saying this?
It could have been either. I don't remember. I remember him telling me, and I remember hearing it from other people. So I don't recall, sir.
When you heard it from other people, were you in Santa Barbara or in Los Angeles, or where?
Probably in Santa Barbara.
So you heard it from fellow classmates in Santa Barbara?
It could have been.
Do you remember any of the names of these people?
No, sir.
All right, anything else?
When you visited with Erik Menendez after learning the information that Craig Signorelli gave to you, did you tell Erik
Objection, as soon as the fact might know.
Overall.
You follow what I'm saying?
One more time.
After you had gotten the information from Craig Signorelli that Erik Menendez had told Craig Signorelli that he and Lyle had killed their parents.
Right.
And later you went to visit Erik Menendez.
Right.
Did you tell Erik Menendez what Craig had said?
No, I couldn't. We were on the phone. I didn't. That they were taping it.
You recall saying that if you wanted something to be secret, that you could have written it on a piece of paper.
But I didn't.
So you never told your friend who gave you the moniker of King.
Objection, Your
that-
Honor, we can argue to the jury now.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit far afield here. Let's go
You
on.
never told Erik Menendez after Craig Signorelli told you what he had told Craig. You never told Erik about that.
Erik knew that. If Erik had told Craig, then Erik would already know that. There would be no reason for me to tell him that, right? I mean, if he did know that,
All right, let's.
I don't understand what you're trying to ask me.
Okay, let's go on to something.
I was on a taped thing and I couldn't ask.
Just relax. Are you done?
Your next question.
So you're telling me that you went and visited your friend who nicknamed you the king, and you didn't want to tell him that this other friend told you that he told him, blah. Even Judge Weisberg is like, all right, you've gone on enough.
That's the
All right, any examination by the defense?
Yes, briefly. And Mr. Whalen, before you spoke to the police in October of 1990, there'd been a whole lot of publicity about the Menendez case, had there not?
That's correct.
I mean, Craig's face was all over TV talking about his involvement in the case, wasn't it?
That is correct.
And it was common knowledge that Craig was going around claiming that Erik had confessed to him.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you attended Santa Barbara the same semester, and you attended school in Santa Barbara the same semester that Craig was attending UC Santa Barbara.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
And was it while you were in Santa Barbara that Craig told you? Well, first of all, did he tell you or did he boast?
Well, he was telling a lot of different people, so I don't recall the actual context. I don't.
When he was telling you, were you alone with him or was he in a crowd?
I don't recall.
Now, this was after, however, he was upset with the fact that you were called king now and not him.
Well, yes, that had happened prior to Erik, right as he was leaving for Beverly Hills. So yes.
It's kind of crazy how the smallest slight can cause someone to then be so damaging to someone else in such a serious and crazy way. It's just, I mean, like this, that's at least the suggestion from the defense here is that Craig was upset about the fact that he was no longer the king, and that's why he decided to go and screw Erik over, is to try to win one over him. I mean, it could be. I don't know.
Yes,
It happened like a year before, over a year before.
that is correct.
Mr. Whalen, would you be willing
Now,
to go
when
to
you were
jail
talking to the police on October
king?
3rd, this whole issue of
just to be the
Craig
king?
saying something to you came up because the police confronted you and said they had a witness who claimed that you said Erik confessed to you.
That is correct.
And Erik never confessed to you.
Never did.
And did you tell the police that the witness was wrong? You had never said that Erik confessed to you.
Yeah, he had overheard me talking about it. That was it.
He being a fellow named Jerry Sparks.
At Dodger Stadium, yes, ma'am.
And this was that you were working at Dodger Stadium.
He has a security guard, yes, ma'am.
And you had made a statement to someone else that supposedly Erik had confessed the murder.
Yes, ma'am, but not to me.
Right, and this Sparks person went to the Beverly Hills police and told them that you had received a confession from Erik.
That is correct.
And when, therefore, Detective Zoller confronted you with the statement by Jerry Sparks that Erik had admitted killing his parents, that's when you said, the only person I know of who claims that Erik confessed is Craig Signorelli.
That is correct.
And do you even know, Mr. Whalen, whether Craig told you this himself or whether you just heard it?
It could have been both. I recall, him telling a lot of people around town and him telling me. So
You do recall him telling you,
yeah, and everybody hearing it around town. So
but you don't know when this happened.
I don't know which came first. I don't know when it was, but I know both were done.
And is it your recollection that whenever it happened, it was in Santa Barbara?
Yes, ma'am, because there was no time between September 1st and September 5th when I left for school that I was with Craig without Erik. I mean, I was left for school and then I was there.
But that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to try to remember when it is, even if you can't remember the date, try to remember the occasion upon which Craig told you. Were you in Santa Barbara?
Yes, ma'am. I was going to school there. I wasn't anywhere else.
Well, what'd you do the next semester?
I left for Connecticut and lived with my father.
And you didn't see Craig Signorelli then?
No, ma'am.
Did you come back for the summer?
Yes, I left Connecticut in May, early May.
And in the summer of 1990, didn't you see Craig Signorelli back around the old haunts in Calabasas and the Brewer?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it possible that he told you then?
Yes, ma'am. It's possible. I mean,
And in the summer of 1990, Erik was already arrested, wasn't he?
yes, ma'am.
So could Craig Signorelli have made this statement to you after Erik was arrested, but before October 3rd when you talked to Detective Zoller?
I remember hearing that Craig was telling people that Erik had killed his parents, and that was common knowledge around town. And I remember Craig telling me when I was in Santa Barbara.
Okay, so you believe Craig told you in Santa Barbara?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let me just ask counsel, is it not correct that the evidence is that Mr. Signorelli discussed this conversation with Detective Zoller on November the 17th of 1989?
That's correct, Your Honor.
So what is it that we're trying to obtain from this witness of the conversation in 1990?
The fact that this is a prior consistent statement made by Craig Signorelli prior to his testimony in court, which is being attacked.
Okay, but we have testimony from Detective Zoller that Mr. Signorelli told him about this in November of 1989, which is a year before this incident we're talking about now. That's much earlier in time, is it not?
This,
So why are we spending time on this?
this statement is also relevant to show that Craig Signorelli told this witness, who then went to the jail and spoke to Erik Menendez. And although he doesn't make the statements that he made here in court some 3 years later about being at the house in Beverly Hills, he indicates that as of October 3rd, 1990, he had been told by Craig Signorelli that Erik had confessed to him, and he had visited with Erik Menendez subsequent to the statement that he gave on October 3rd, 1990.
All right, then you're offering it not so much or not only as a prior inconsistent statement, but for some other reason, or prior consistent statement, but for some other reason.
That's correct. It's not only a prior consistent statement under 791 of the evidence code, but it's also relevant to show that the information had gone to Casey Whalen from Craig Signorelli and was available for Erik Menendez when Mr. Whalen
He already-
visited with Erik Menendez
he already testified.
subsequent to the statements given to him by Craig Signorelli.
That this witness could have related to Erik Menendez, that Craig Signorelli was spreading the word about statement?
Yes.
Excuse me. I don't get it.
Well, I'm
Yeah, I don't think that's particularly compelling or relevant testimony. It's he's really kind of straining there, and I get that the prosecution is trying to say, like, they're trying to build this connection of like, oh, you're too close to the defendant, and oh, absolutely, you would tell Erik Menendez when you visited him in prison. You visited him in prison. And therefore you knew that Craig Signorelli was running around with these claims that Erik had had confessed to Craig Signorelli to murdering his parents. So therefore you're going to give him a heads up or something in prison. um I mean, the problem with it is there's no testimony that he actually did tell him that. There's no evidence that he actually did tell him that. So you're gonna the most that the prosecution can get out of that is a suspicion that he did, based on the fact that he had the opportunity to do so.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the people's offer here then.
Yeah, I don't.
Regardless of whether you get it or not, it's a question
I
of
know,
whether I get it.
I don't understand that argument, so I can't really respond to it.
All right. How much further cross did you have with this witness?
Probably have another half hour.
Another half hour.
Your Honor, I think that's
Well, how much do you have?
very, I mean, if he's gonna do a half an hour, I have no idea what you could think of doing a half an hour on, but I don't have much.
Well, normally what happens is when people give those estimates,
It
either
disappears.
it either disappears or gets much longer depending on the witness and which lawyer is doing the questioning.
I really don't have much.
You have another witness tomorrow or this
I have
afternoon?
his mother, she could come back, she's local, she could come back Tuesday rather than bring the jury back for a 10-minute witness. She's simply gonna confirm the day upon which he picked Erik up at the airport, the fact that he stayed at, since he's now being impeached, the fact that he stayed at her house for 11 days, the fact that the first weekend he slept there, he being Erik, slept there every night, and that's about it. But rather than bring everybody back to do that, if we could finish with him this afternoon, he's supposed to go back to school.
Well, I would like to, but I don't want to foreclose further examination. Do you realistically think you have a half an hour to go?
I believe so. We have some documents that I'll check into that I may ask this witness to take a look at.
Well, I don't have any idea what documents that people are referring to, but I have a feeling somebody's stalling.
Oh, no, this is a very much good faith, we're not stalling at all, Your Honor, this is a good faith area of inquiry.
And you believe it'll also take about a half hour to finish it off?
Well, it could.
Okay, well, let's have the jury out and I'll go back tomorrow.
Why don't we just keep going? I'm willing to stay another half hour.
Well, that's great, but I'm not going to get the jurors here.
Okay. All right. So they're gonna bring in the jurors, and then they're gonna send them out for the day. So we're gonna go on to the next one here, because they send him out, they bring him back the next day, and we will share the screen here for the next day. Let's see if he's wearing the same paisley tie. Also, by the way, we're skipping about 14 minutes of back and forth between the attorneys before they bring the witness back and then bring the jury into the room. So we're going to go ahead and just skip ahead of that. Because I'm pretty sure it's primarily like housekeeping matters and that kind of thing. So we're going to skip right into the testimony. But that back and forth was very interesting as to his testimony here. We can kind of sort of comment on that a little bit too. Why is this? Hang on. Why is this so? Okay, here we go. This is, there we go. Okay. Was taking up the entire screen and blocking other stuff. So what they're talking about is they're trying to get into this whole thing of Craig Signorelli claimed to Casey Whalen, the current witness, that Erik Menendez confessed to him to murdering his parents. That is disputed by the defense. The only confession that they ever made, that either of the brothers ever made, was to Dr. Oziel. And so there's this whole thing about client confidentiality, doctor-patient confidentiality. And so this was that issue that went up to the appellate court, and eventually came back down. And this actually kind of changed the law a little bit in California as to when a psychologist could and was required to, actually had an affirmative duty to disclose certain information from someone that would otherwise be confidential because of the nature of the relationship between the doctor and the patient. But there's still, I mean, the defense is still fighting at trial, this idea of whether or not Dr. Oziel really had a good faith belief that his life was actually in danger, that his family's life was in danger, that his mistress's life was in danger. That part gets so funky for me. Anyway, there's just so much weirdness around all of that. Which we still haven't heard from the mistress, by the way. I am very curious to hear from her. I hope we hear from her soon. But okay, so now we've got that's a little bit of a I really just kind of like went down this sideways path here. But back to Craig Signorelli, this claim. So let's see what the judge actually decided as to whether or not Casey Wheeling can testify to that, or, the more properly, whether or not the prosecution can cross-examine him on that specific topic. So let's continue.
All right, we'll proceed with the cross-examination. Would you state your name again for the record, please?
Kevin Christopher Whalen. Casey is my nickname.
Okay, Mr. Whalen, I'll remind you.
Also known as the Wizard
Yes, sir.
and
All right,
the
You
King.
may continue your examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Whalen, when is it that you first visited defendant Erik Menendez in jail?
I believe it was around the time of Memorial Weekend of what would be 90.
I'm also happy to see that he's in Gryffindor. So, I mean, I'm not Gryffindor, but it's nice to see some representation even before the books existed.
1990?
Yes, sir.
And how many times did you visit him?
Twice. I believe it was either back-to-back days or one day a break, and then the next day it was. I think it was back-to-back days. I'm not quite sure.
And after those visits, when did you next visit?
It would be January of 93, around the 12th or 13th with Ms. Abramson.
That's a total of 3 times.
Yes, sir.
Did you testify yesterday in a hearing outside the presence of the jury?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, foundation.
Overruled to that question. Obviously, it's foundational at this point.
Did you testify yesterday?
Yes, sir.
In that hearing, did you state that you had made more visits than that?
I said
Your Honor, mistake the testimony.
Overruled.
3 or 4 times. I wasn't quite sure, I believe.
You never visited in 1991 or 1992?
No, sir.
In your statement on October the 3rd, 1990, as you testified yesterday, that Erik Menendez had asked you to be a character witness and you were due to visit Erik Menendez in the jail, and you will further discuss the matter with him. Did you not go and visit him after that October 3rd report?
I did not. I wanted to, and I never did.
Did you ever receive any phone calls at your home from Erik Menendez?
No, sir.
Now, on October 3rd, 1990, you gave a statement to the Beverly Hills Police Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that statement, did you relate information that you had received from Craig Signorelli?
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Sustained. Rephrase the question, please.
Did Craig Signorelli, prior to your interview on October 3rd, 1990, tell you about the murders of Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
I believe, like I said yesterday, sometime between when I was in Santa Barbara, between September and January, Craig had told me, and I've also heard from other people that he'd said that Erik had admitted it to him that he had killed his parents, as I stated yesterday.
And that was between September of 1989 and January of 1990?
Yes, sir. While I was in Santa Barbara before I left for Connecticut.
Can you be any more specific?
No, sir, I cannot. As yesterday, you asked me a few different times, and I just said I couldn't put a finger on it. I just don't remember exactly when it was.
Do you know who was present when the statement was related to you by Craig Signorelli?
No, sir, I do not.
Also already testified to that.
Now, getting back to the day that you supposedly picked up Erik Menendez from the airport,
Yes, sir.
you indicated that you got to the house, that you went upstairs to his bedroom, correct?
Yes, sir.
That Erik Menendez got some clothes,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yeah, checked his messages.
Checked his messages, made no phone calls.
That I remember, no.
You testified yesterday he made no phone calls. Is that correct?
Rephrase the question, please.
Did Erik Menendez make any phone calls?
I said none that I remembered yesterday. When you asked me if he'd made any phone calls while we were checking the computer, I said, not that I remember.
This is also when it's if you're going to nail someone on details, you've got to know your details. This witness is he's very precise. He's he's a young kid, so an attorney could think that they can just kind of steamroll him, but he's been doing very well in this cross-examination. He's remained respectful. He has remained polite. He hasn't lost his temper. He hasn't gotten flustered either. And he remembers his details. So, he says, as I said yesterday, this is what I said. And prosecution's trying to nail him on it, but he's not going to get him, because if there's a question and they have to go back to the transcript, it's going to support what this witness said, because he knows what he's talking about, and he's being very precise. And he's like, like I said yesterday, it was 3 or 4 times, or 3 or 4 days, whatever it was. And that is in fact what he said in the previous day. So it's like, if you're going to nail someone on details, you've got to make sure that you know your details yourself, because otherwise the witness is going to start pushing back on you, and that's going to come through to the jury.
Well, we were checking the computer. When
Is that what I
you
just said?
checked his phone messages when you first got to the house, you indicated he made no return call.
No.
Is that
That's
correct?
right. Correct.
And you don't recall if the computer man made a phone call.
I don't remember.
And the only time you were out of the presence of Erik Menendez was a few minutes before you actually left.
Yes, sir. From what I remember, yes, sir.
And while the computer person was in the bedroom, you were there the whole time, correct?
In the bedroom, yes, sir.
And you said the bed was 5 feet away,
I said 5 to 10 feet. I didn't know exact measurements. It was about that.
and you were playing with a tennis ball that whole time.
And well, I stopped and looked over his shoulder to see what they were doing. And then I just kind of was waiting for them to get done with what they were doing.
I also don't know why why Kuriyama is like so focused on the tennis ball. Like he was playing with a tennis ball. That's something that you can do while also doing other things. Kind of like, I have putty that I'm playing with. So I could testify I am playing with hand putty while watching and commenting on a trial on YouTube. Does that mean I'm not paying attention? No, for me personally, it means I'm probably paying better attention. So I just it's kind of funny that he's just like, oh, and you're playing with the tennis ball, and you're playing with the tennis ball, as if he's like, this jock that can't do 2 things at once.
Yesterday, you had indicated that Erik Menendez had his Ford Escort at your house.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall when the car was there?
Yeah, we went back and got it the next day.
That's what you recall now?
Yes, sir. because I went back and I wanted to make sure that I remembered that I was telling the right story. So I just wanted to make sure that I knew his car was there, and I went back and got it the next day. Because I went and talked to my sister about it last night. I just wanted to make sure I was telling the right story.
Telling the right story.
I just want to tell the truth, sir. And yesterday I'd said the car was there, and I knew he had his car during the week, so I took him back the next day to get it.
And you recall that because your sister told you that?
No, I said, Katie, Erik had his car. And she goes, yeah, you remember taking him to get his car at the Beverly Hills house? And I said, was that the next day? And she said, yeah. And my mom said the same thing. So it's just after 4 years, a lot of these things, I just wanted to make sure I was telling the right story when I got up here.
You didn't recall that yesterday?
No, sir. I said his car was there during the week, and I wasn't quite sure how it got there because he and I rode back the original day to my house together in my mom's car. And I took him to get it the next day.
Who was with you?
The next day?
Yes.
Just he and I.
And what time was that?
I have no idea. Sometime after we got up, maybe we caught lunch. I don't remember. It was 4 years ago.
Which is that sounds like a very honest answer. I mean, how realistically, let's go back 4 years, 2019. How much do you remember of a random interaction that you had? Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to do that. How much do you remember of an interaction that you had with someone else, even, that you later have every reason to try to remember because it's very important to remember. You're still going to be forgetting some things. Things are going to get fuzzy. Let's see. What did I do in 2019? I moved from California to DC. I started a new job. I, moved to a new location. Like there are certain things that I can remember, but there are plenty of things that someone could be like, "Hey, do you remember this event that we went to and we spoke to so and so and it was at this time and that we went to this location and that location?" There's plenty that I've forgotten from 4 years ago. So this is very, to me, I find that very credible. I will say when he says I want to tell the right story, Kuriyama kind of pounced on that a little bit to be like, telling the right story, huh? As in like, are there multiple stories? Are you are telling a story? Because the truth is not a story. The truth is the truth. A story is a fabrication. So, that's something that as a witness, we don't want to hear a witness saying that they are telling the jury a story because that sounds like it could be fabricated. Um, for it, I understand what it seems like he's trying to get at is, I want to make sure that I am giving everything accurately. And so I wanted to verify that by talking to my sister about it, before I testified, because she was also around at that time too, and I wanted to make sure that I had everything straight, so that I am retelling what happened as accurately as possible. But using the word story can sometimes be uh, a bit of a red flag for people because it sounds like you're making it up, like you're telling fiction. So, but whether or not you find that fishy or whether you believe him to be credible nonetheless, entirely up to you.
The day that you picked up Erik Menendez, you specifically remember that particular day?
I remember events like I stated yesterday. Yes, sir.
What do you remember about that day?
Objection, Your Honor.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
What specifically do you recall about the day that you picked up Erik Menendez?
I'd object.
That's a little too broad.
Okay.
Why don't you focus?
What do you remember about after you left the room, the computer room, that day?
I walked down out to the car. Erik came out about 4 minutes later with a few things in his hands. We went home. We had dinner with my sister and my mother and Erik and myself. We went to bed. That's what I remember from the day.
And what time is it that you left the Beverly Hills house?
I have no idea. I said that his flight had maybe gotten in at noon. We were at the house at 2. I don't remember. Maybe I have no idea. It was 4 years ago. I don't even remember the events.
Flight arrived at LAX at noon.
I believe so.
And it took how long to get to Beverly Hills from LAX?
I have no idea. By the time we got his bags and got there, I don't know if there was traffic. I just don't remember. I mean, some days it could probably take a half an hour, some days an hour with traffic. I just don't know what the traffic was like that day. I just don't remember those specific events.
That's entirely fair. Traffic is very,
You had
very
indicated yesterday that
a very big
you
factor in
were
LA.
there with the computer man from about 30 to 45 minutes. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And when you left out of the room, you left the computer man with Erik Menendez. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I believe I left a few minutes before he came down to see me.
Okay. Did you go to your car in front of the house?
Yes, sir. I got out to the car there.
Okay. And was it parked in the driveway or on the street?
It was parked on the other side of the street. It was just parked on that side of the street.
In the front of the house?
Yes, sir.
When you saw Erik Menendez come out a few minutes after you left, did he have a little bag with him?
I don't remember specifically. I just remember he needed to pick up some clothes because he needed a few extra things, a few notes. I wasn't quite sure. So I don't remember specifically what he had in his hand.
When you left the bedroom with the computer, did you say, Erik, I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to be in the car waiting for you?
More or less something to that effect. I don't remember specifically what I said.
Did you know at that time how long it would take the computer man to finish his job?
I believe I wouldn't have gone. I mean, I figured they were wrapping up whatever they were doing, that it was, I was just like, well, I'm sure you'll be done in a few minutes, whatever. I didn't know what they needed to talk about. And I figured it was probably towards the end of what they were doing.
Now, were you parked on the side of the street closest to the house or the opposite side?
Opposite side.
Did you look toward the house, the front of the house, and see Erik Menendez exit the front doors?
Maybe, I'm sure by the time I was getting in the car, maybe I saw him standing by the car. I mean,
And
I was-
I'm going to object and you to strike the answer as speculation.
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
At some point, you went down to your car, which was parked in the front of the house, and you were waiting for Erik Menendez to come, correct?
yes, sir.
And at some point, you saw him coming.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I might've been in the car.
The answer is speculation.
Objection sustained. Just answer what you remember, not what might have happened. Just what you remember.
Sir, I don't remember specifically what happened. I could have been turning the stereo, moving the car so Erik could sit down. I just don't specifically. I might have looked at him. I might have not. I might have been turning the car around. And by the time he was at the door, opening the door. So I just don't know whether I was looking at him or I never even looked at him. By the time I'd open the door, I'd turn the car around and he was standing right there to get in. So I might not have even seen him walk out.
I move to strike all of that as speculation.
Yeah.
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
Yeah. I mean,
Mr. Witt,
literally all of what he just said was like, I don't know. I really don't know. Here's why I don't know. All of these reasons why I don't know. And so, anytime you have a witness saying I'm not sure. I don't know what happened. I don't remember what happened. It could have been this. It could have been that. That is all language that is indicating speculation, which is, not something that they can testify to. So all of that is it's getting stricken from the record for purposes of an appeal or whatever, but the jury also just like heard him say, I mean, I don't know, 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 I don't know. So the jury is still gonna hear all of that, but it shouldn't make a difference one way or another, honestly.
Mr. Whalen, after you left out, did you leave out the front door?
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered.
Overruled.
Did you leave out the front door?
Yes, sir. Through the gates.
And then went through the front gates and then got to your car. And a couple minutes later, Erik was at your car. You don't know how he got there, but he was there. Is that
I would
right?
object to the
Calls for speculation.
Overruled. You can answer that.
Is that correct, Mr. Whalen?
Once again, I don't recall the actual events leading up to Erik being in the car.
Okay, you're just recalling somehow getting in the car. Is that
Exactly. The next thing I knew, we were on our way back to my house. So I don't remember.
In your recollection, it was a couple minutes later.
Yes, from what I remember. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this next day would have been September 2nd.
That's correct.
You supposedly drove Erik back to his house in Beverly Hills,
Yes, sir.
and you don't recall what time that was,
No, sir.
whether it was morning or night.
I would believe it was afternoonish again. I said we probably woke up, maybe had lunch or something. I took him to get his car. I don't recall.
Did Erik Menendez have his keys with him to his car?
I guess he must have if he was going to pick up his car to drive it. I mean, I might have taken him to the house and he might have got the keys from inside. I don't recall. I just knew that I had to get him to his house so he could pick up his car.
Okay, let's just stay on that subject then. When you drove him to his house in Beverly Hills, did you wait for him to get his car?
I don't remember.
Did you go somewhere with him after you got his car?
I don't remember.
You do remember that you took him to get his car?
Well, I remembered he needed his car for the week because I had errands to run, like I talked about yesterday, to get ready for school. And that, so I took him to get his car. I don't remember events leading up to or right after that.
So you don't know if he stayed at his house then?
I believe he left when I left. I just don't know, sir.
We're getting close to speculation territory again.
That same day, did you see Erik Menendez at your house?
I believe so. I don't remember specific events again, sir. I just don't. From that instance, I mean, he was at my house for up until I left for school, and then I left for school. So, we spent time. We watched movies together with my family. We went out a night. I went out one other night with some of my other friends. I just don't remember specifically what happened each day there. It was 4 years ago. Lots happened. I just don't remember.
So it's possible that he wasn't there a couple of nights, as far as you know.
Like I talked about yesterday, Erik and I went at.
Back to the question today, whether it's the first before the witness went back to school or after.
Your answer.
The question one more time.
As far as you know, during the period of time that you were there,
Okay.
September 1st through the 5th, I believe you said.
Right.
You don't know if Erik Menendez was there at night.
Yes, because I had gone out with him a few nights, like I just said, and we watched a movie one night. But I remember one night I did not go out with him because I went out with some of my other friends before I left for school.
So you don't know where he was on that particular night.
Nope, I didn't know where he was that night.
Did you receive calls from Erik Menendez while he was staying at your house?
In Santa Barbara?
No, in Agora.
Why don't you rephrase that question?
Yeah.
Did you receive, well, Erik was supposedly staying at your house during this period of time,
Yes, sir.
September 1st through the 5th.
Right.
Did you receive phone calls from him?
He was staying at my house, sir. I didn't, not to my knowledge. I mean, I was either with him or he was out. I mean, I don't believe he called my house if he was staying there. So not that I remember.
Yeah, I have some phone records I'd like to
Well, before
have
we
marked.
Yeah, I can show them to council.
Yes, I asked counsel for this earlier. Yes, yes, I would like to.
Let's take a break and give council a chance to review the records, and we'll resume at 10 minutes after the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 10 minutes after.
What do you need me to do, sir?
Why don't you stay there until the jurors leave, and then you can get down.
Okay. And just wait
All
out
right.
there.
And we're gonna
Oh, you can
Take a
sit
seat
in the
right
court.
there.
we're gonna
Yeah.
skip
Okay.
ahead. It's only like 5 minutes or 6 minutes, but
Phone records that I would like to mark.
We're objecting to the use of these phone records because they have no probative value.
okay.
Let's have the jury panel in, please. And the jurors are back, and you may continue your cross-examination.
I'd like to see it.
Is it a blank piece of paper that you want somebody to write something on?
Exactly.
Okay, it'll be 214.
Push the witness.
Yes.
Mr. Whalen, I'm going to give you what's now a blank sheet, except for it says Exhibit 214 in the right upper corner. I'm going to ask you to write down the phone numbers to your house where you're living in Agora during September of 1989, if you would.
Yes, sir. There you go.
There are two numbers.
Yes, sir.
You just sign your name.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So it sounds like the judge probably agreed with the prosecution to use phone records, maybe to impeach this witness, because the last question before the jury was sent out was about whether or not Erik Menendez had called this witness, Casey Whalen, while Erik was staying at Casey Whalen's house. I didn't catch whether it was before Casey left for college or after Casey left for college, because Erik stayed for a little bit after Casey left with his parents, or with his mom, I should say. So the defense tried to argue that it wasn't probative. I guess they lost that argument. So we are probably going to see some phone records here, some kind of statements about Erik calling the house for some reason, and ostensibly calling. I guess that would be before he left for college then. But ostensibly talking to Casey about something.
Mr. Whalen, getting back to what Erik Menendez had told Craig Signorelli, as related to you by Craig Signorelli, sometime between September of 1989 and January of 1990. What exactly did Craig Signorelli tell you?
Overall.
What did he tell me, or
Yes.
what did I? Okay, from Craig, just from what I remember, it was more or less Erik had admitted to me that he had killed his parents.
Now, at that point, you were a friend of Craig Signorelli's?
Yes, sir.
You were also a friend of Erik Menendez's?
Yes, sir.
Erik Menendez was still on the streets during that period of time, correct?
Yes, sir.
He wasn't arrested until March of 1990, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you call Erik Menendez up and tell him what you had heard from Craig Signorelli?
No, sir.
You did not.
Not from what I remember. No, sir.
Why not? Didn't you want?
Object, Your Honor.
Overall.
Did you want Erik Menendez to know what was being said about the murders?
I didn't know where he was living.
And he didn't have cell phones in those days.
Had you ever been to his condominium in the Marina City Club,
No, sir.
Marina Del Rey?
No, sir.
At some point, did you learn of that fact?
Objection, Your Honor. There one thing.
So say it.
At some point, did you learn that Erik Menendez was living in a condominium in the Marina City Club?
I object to characterization.
Overall.
After the fact, after I'd heard on the news, after the boys had been arrested, I'd
Objection, Your Honor.
Right, the question, objection sustained, the answer is stricken. The question was, did you ever hear he was living somewhere?
I didn't know what he was doing.
At some point, did you learn that Erik Menendez was living in a condominium in Marina Del Rey?
Your Honor, the calls for hearsay.
Overall.
Not till after he was arrested. I didn't know anything about Marina Del Rey until they were arrested.
So when you gave that information to the police, that was in October of 1990. That was after the arrest, correct?
Yes, sir. I mean, that I learned that they had a place in Marina Del Rey, yeah.
So during that period of time, you didn't know where your best friend was living?
A best friend? He was a good friend of mine, yes, sir.
Oh, that casual use of best friend. I would half expect him to say, the man who appointed you the king. You didn't know where he was living at this time? You don't always know where your friends are living at all times? Always and forever?
Now,
By the way, I mean, in the days before cell phones, like now it's like it's and social media. Like now you can pop in and reach out to a friend that you haven't talked to in years. That's a good friend, but just haven't haven't had a chance to talk to them for a while, and you can easily find them if you've if they've moved, if they've changed phone numbers even. Like there are ways of finding people that are fairly easy. In those days it was not quite the same, but he's trying to paint him as super best friend who isn't really a super best friend.
Now, at some point, you learned that he had been arrested, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was that in March of 1990?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you went to visit him at the jail in May of 1990, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, ask for an answer.
Overruled.
Yes, while I was in Connecticut when they were arrested, and when I got home, it was a few weeks later after I'd gotten back.
This Memorial Day weekend,
Yes, sir.
you went twice to the jail to visit Erik Menendez.
Yes, sir.
Of course, you told him what Craig Signorelli had told you.
Objection, argumentative.
Rephrase the question, please.
Did you tell Erik Menendez at that point what Craig Signorelli had told you months earlier?
No, sir.
Now, based on what you have testified to, Erik Menendez said he was going to kill the persons that killed his parents, correct?
What I had
Objection, Your Honor.
Your objection.
Well, misstates the evidence.
Rephrase the question, please.
Yes, I believe you testified that after the memorial service in Los Angeles, you went to the Bel Air Hotel, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you spent the night there with Erik Menendez and two other of your friends. Is that correct?
Three other.
Three other friends?
Yes, sir.
And you spent most of the night in the jacuzzi.
In and around the jacuzzi. That wasn't the gist of the night. Again, like I said, we needed to take Lyle to the airport. Other things occurred during the night. We ate. So,
But most of the time, as you've indicated, was spent in the jacuzzi. Is that correct?
Objection, misstates the testimony.
Overruled.
no, we didn't spend most of the night in the jacuzzi. We spent some time in the jacuzzi.
Did you state on October 3rd that you spent most of the night in and around the jacuzzi?
In and around, right. That doesn't necessarily mean in the jacuzzi. Yes,
Did
sir.
you bring your swimming trunks with you that day?
Jeez.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
No.
Were you in the jacuzzi?
Yes, sir. Boxers?
Boxers.
Jeez
Was-
Louise.
Erik Menendez in the jacuzzi.
Yes, sir.
And did he have his swimming trunks on?
Okay. Weird questions here. Why does that even matter? It's so not relevant.
I don't recall, sir. Yes. I mean, it's some sort of undergarment on. Yes, sir.
Okay. So were you sipping champagne in this jacuzzi?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
No, sir.
Were you drinking?
No, sir. No.
Was it during this period of time that you heard Erik Menendez make the statement about killing the people that had killed his parents?
There were 4 or 5 of us having a conversation. Like I stated yesterday, I'd overheard the gist of it.
Was that while you were sitting in the jacuzzi?
I don't recall.
It could have been.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you visited Erik Menendez in May of 1990, did you go alone?
No, sir.
Who was with you?
The first day I went with a friend whose father was down there. And
I'm sorry. What was
the
that?
first day I went with a friend whose father was in jail.
Yes.
And the next day or 2 days later, whenever I went, I was with my sister.
This friend whose father was in jail, did he go and visit his father while you were visiting Erik Menendez?
No, he couldn't. He came to see Erik because he knew Erik from my high school as well.
So you sat in together.
Yes, sir.
Did you write any notes to Erik Menendez during either of these two visits?
Yes, sir.
And did you write notes to Erik Menendez?
Yes, sir.
Did you get any notes in return?
No, sir.
How did he respond to you, to your notes?
Well, we knew that everything we talked about was going to be taped. So it was either, I wrote one sentence and it was either a nod or a shrug. So
what you were talking about, you didn't want the authorities to know about.
well, the one question I asked him, it said, "Do you want me to stand trial for you?" And he just kind of shrugged like he didn't know at the time. So it was something along that line.
During that particular meeting, was that with your friend or with your sister?
That was with my sister when I had the note.
At some point,
So, by the way, so that bit about the I see some folks in the chat have mentioned this, but I did have this thought also. I do know that there was some kind of an issue from the little bit that I looked at in this case before actually live streaming the trial, before watching the trial. I know that there was this question that comes up at some point about like Erik being gay or something like that. So and then I'm wondering if like the prosecution, then that whole bit about the jacuzzi and sipping champagne and, oh, they're in their boxers together, that maybe there's like this suggestion of like, oh, they're more than just friends. That's what's going on here. And of course, this is in the 90s, different than today, very different than today. Um, and, also like, "Oh, and Erik anointed you the king," and Craig was jealous, like, as if there's some kind of a love triangle or something going on here. I don't really know. I don't know. But, like, it seems ridiculous by today's standards, that would even be, like, a thing, and also that, like, that would be a suggestion of anything, that, like, they're in the jacuzzi together in their boxers, like, it's just it's a very different time, a very, very different time.
point during that particular meeting, did Erik Menendez tell you, yeah, I want you to be a witness for me?
No, sir. Like I said before, he kind of shrugged and he didn't know what the state of the case was.
And that was the second time that you had visited Erik Menendez then, correct?
That was when I was with my sister, correct.
And the only other time that you ever talked to him and actually have a face-to-face visit with him was in January of 1993.
After that fact, yes, with Mrs. Abramson.
Now, why is it that on October 3rd, 1990, you told the police that Erik had asked you to be a character witness for him?
When I wrote him the note, I didn't know what standing trial meant, whether he wanted me. He was a friend of mine and I wanted to help him out any way I could. I didn't know what the actual title of what I just wanted to help out a friend. So I'd asked him if he wanted me to stand trial.
So that answer is, I understand what he's saying. There's a way of interpreting what he's saying in a way that is very innocent and very innocuous. There's also a way of interpreting what he said as I will do whatever you need me to do as your friend, including lying for you. Like there's also a way of interpreting it that way, and that's what the prosecution is trying to draw out of him. I personally find him credible. I think, he comes across as very honest. I think that he um I I think, I don't know. I just to me, he comes across as honest and credible, based on what he said about what he remembers, what he doesn't remember, the way that the details that he does remember, he's very precise about it. So yeah.
The question is, during that meeting, you discussed being a witness for him, and he never said, yeah, I want you to be a witness. Yet, this is a statement that you made to the police on October 3rd, 1990, that he had asked you to be a witness for him?
I said that he had shrugged, like kind of, well, yeah, I don't know. And that's what I said here. So I took it as, yeah, I guess Erik's going to maybe need my help to be a character witness.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Redirect.
I have a piece of paper, Your Honor, rather crumpled, which I'd like to mark as the next exhibit.
Ooh, crumpled piece of paper as an exhibit. Oh, is that the note? Is that the note that was ostensibly from Lyle, but in handwriting that Erik didn't recognize?
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen, do you recognize item 215?
Yes, ma'am. It's my writing.
I haven't asked you yet.
Okay.
Slow down.
All right.
What is item 215?
It is the note that I brought with me that day that I wrote on to Erik.
Ah, okay. So the other note.
Did you bring a note to the visit already written out, or did you write the note out while you were visiting Erik?
While I was visiting Erik.
And is that the note you wrote that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you keep it?
That's just the kind of person I am. I have every shirt I've had since. I just keep things. I guess. I mean, some people are neat freaks. I'm just, yeah, I guess I am. That's just.
And it's all crumpled up, that piece of paper. How did it get crumpled up?
It was stuffed away in a drawer, and I actually just found it at the beginning of last month.
And when did you give it to me?
This morning.
And when did you tell me you still had it?
Last night. I didn't know if I still had it. I had to go check my drawer.
And you found it last night in your drawer.
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
That piece of paper, what, would you just read the first word that's on that piece of paper?
It says forgot.
And was that something you wrote to Erik?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that in response to something he said?
No, I was going to ask him a question, and I forgot what it was.
And so you wrote him that you forgot the question you were trying to ask.
Exactly.
And then did you write what's below that on the note after that?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you read to the jury what's below the word forgot on the note?
Do you want me to maybe stand trial?
And by stand trial, you didn't mean you wanted to take his chair over here on the on trial setting.
No, ma'am. I didn't know what it entailed. I don't know anything.
No,
He might take the
no.
witness stand.
That someone who comes to testify is called a witness of that.
I had no idea.
Okay, so I think what they're getting at is he's not suggesting that he go so far as to take Erik's place, but he's wants to participate, or wants to offer to participate. I do want to point out one point here, Miriam. This is interesting. Not really so sure about him. I think you're talking about Erik once looked at him and was smiling, talking about being in the jacuzzi. I think he's putting on a convincing show. That's an interesting. I remember looking at that, seeing that point where Erik was looking at him and smiling around that time during the cross-examination. But I had a different interpretation of that smile, because that was when Kuriyama asked about champagne. Like, were you sipping champagne in the jacuzzi? And I registered that as, what a ridiculous question. Like, this guy's asking us if we sip champagne together. Like, we've never had champagne, like that was my interpretation of it. But that's why, anytime you have a defendant sitting in the courtroom, you've got to watch out about facial expressions, because they can be interpreted in different ways, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. So it's, this is an indication that can be interpreted multiple ways. So yeah, just wanted to point that out.
And was there some cryptic conversation between you and Erik after you wrote that note in which he indicated maybe he could use you as a witness, maybe not?
That was the shrugging that I alluded to earlier, that he said, yeah, maybe I could need you.
Now, when you visited Erik, on all three occasions, in fact, did you have to talk over a telephone to him?
That is correct.
let's talk about the first visit when you went with the friend.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the friend's name?
Scott Fair. Faer. Faer.
Excuse me. And when you went to visit Erik on that occasion, were there other people visiting at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there other inmates being visited?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there people sitting right next to you
Yes, ma'am.
on both sides of you?
Yes, ma'am. We had to stand because there was only one chair. So Scott stood behind me while I talked to Erik, and then vice versa.
And was there someone visiting somebody else to your right
Yes, ma'am.
and somebody visiting somebody else to your left?
Yes, ma'am.
And then there's all these windows that you're looking at.
That is correct.
And behind the window you're in front of was Erik.
Yes, ma'am.
And he was talking to you on a phone.
That is correct.
So you couldn't pass notes.
No, there's no, he was shackled and everything. No, I mean, there's a barrier.
Okay.
inside the jail when he came to the visits that you saw his hands are chained together, are they not?
Yes, and his feet.
And so if you'd write a note, the way for him to know what's in your note is what?
Hold it up to the window.
Hold it up on the glass so he can read it.
Right.
And then he nods or shrugs or does something in response to your note.
Exactly.
Now, on that occasion when you were there with Scott Fair, did you discuss any facts about the case with Erik whatsoever?
No, ma'am.
The next visit that you made in the company of your sister,
That is correct.
and her name is Katie Whalen,
That's correct.
and that's the occasion on which you wrote the note.
That is correct.
And you described on the first visit that Scott Fair had to stand behind you. On this visit, did Katie stand behind you?
Yeah, we kind of switched off talking to him.
If you were writing a note, would that mean that you were the person sitting down?
That is correct.
And on that occasion, when your sister was there, did you discuss anything about the case itself with Erik?
No, ma'am.
What was your purpose, Mr. Whalen, in going to visit Erik on these two occasions in May of 1990?
I wanted to see how he was doing.
So was it a personal visit?
Without a doubt. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Were you concerned about him?
Very much so.
Did you care about his welfare?
Very much so.
Were you trying to show support?
Without a doubt. Yes, ma'am.
Scribble, 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 scribble.
And Mr. Kuriyama asked you about this statement that Craig Signorelli made to you. What did you say to Craig Signorelli when he made this statement to you?
I just found it hard to believe.
Did you tell him you thought he was lying?
I just found it hard to believe the first time and walked away.
And this is when he supposedly told you that Erik had admitted killing his parents.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, was based on your lengthy acquaintanceship with Mr. Signorelli, did you believe at that point that he was capable of making a story like this up?
Very much so.
Was he someone who, in your experience, liked to be the center of attention?
Ooh.
Yes, ma'am.
Did he like to brag and boast around his peer group?
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh.
And is that what you thought he was doing?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you, when you were in Santa Barbara, hear from a number of different people that Craig had been going around town making the same statement? Oh, Erik Menendez confessed to me.
I'm sorry?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustain.
Well, it has to do with this witness's state of mind, Your Honor, and credibility.
Objection sustained.
Did Craig Signorelli make another statement to you concerning what he was going to say about Erik after he made that first statement?
I'm not sure what you're...
I'm not sure you understand. All right,
Yes, ma'am.
let me get to it. In August of 1990, did Craig tell you that he wanted to go back to the police and tell them that Lyle had forced Erik to kill his parents?
That is correct.
And did you see Craig again in September of 1990?
Yes, ma'am.
And on that occasion, did Craig again say to you that he wanted to try and prove that Lyle forced Erik to do it?
Yes, ma'am.
So he was making up stories. Is that correct? In August and September of 1990?
Yes, it turned out yes, ma'am.
Now, at the time that you went to visit Erik in May of 1990. Had there already been television coverage of this case which featured Craig Signorelli?
Yes, since March. I mean, I was in Connecticut, so I had no other tie to it except for seeing things on TV. Yes, ma'am.
Things like hard copy and
Exactly.
now, Mr. Whalen, since this trial began, you have been most of the time away at school. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Where are you currently attending school?
Arizona State University,
And what year are you in now?
a senior.
And do you hold any position or post with the school?
Overall.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a devil's advocate, which we do orientation for students coming in. Member of the Interfraternity Council Cabinet. I'm a Rush chairman of my fraternity, executive council member. I also work with Christine Wilkinson, who's vice president of the school, for orientation things. So,
Devil's advocate is, for those of you who are not familiar with American universities, devil's advocate, it refers to Arizona State University is the Sun Devils is their mascot. So that's why that would come up. So just so you know. So my guess is, so he started off going to a community college in Santa Barbara. It was Santa Barbara City College, I think. So my guess is he did a couple years there and then transferred over to Arizona State University, which Raquel Beck's in the chat notes Arizona State, #1 party school in the country. Yeah, probably.
Okay. Well, strike that. You know that this trial, among other places, is being carried on a cable network called Court TV.
correct.
And have you actually observed certain sessions of the case on Court TV?
Yes, ma'am.
And as to sessions that you have not personally observed, have you been made aware of some of the testimony in the case?
Yes, my sister cuts out the article every day, so I read every day what's going on.
All right. So you are aware, are you not, Mr. Whalen, that there has been testimony in this case that the computer person who came to Erik's house was accompanied by a very pregnant wife?
Yes, I don't remember her being there.
But you do know that that's been the testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you believe you are a person who is capable of lying if you wanted to?
It's argumentative.
But this is already an interesting point here, right? Because the prosecution on cross-examination, kind of tried to nail him a little bit on the conversation that he had with his sister about the story, telling the right story. And so it sounded like, that started to sound a little bit like this is somebody who is trying to line up his testimony, right? And remember, today, usually the default is, the rule is invoked, right? So any of the witnesses that are testifying, if unless they have been released as witnesses, they are not. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, okay, yeah, it's a little warm. Thank you. They are not. Thank you. I love you. They are not allowed to watch any of the testimony. They're not allowed to pay attention. They're not allowed to read any articles about it. That was why in the Depp trial, Gina Deuters actually got kicked out partway through her testimony because, there was a question of like, have you watched any of the testimony in this trial? Which later on, I remember thinking about it later and I was like, wait, did she mean from this trial or did she mean from the UK trial? Because that could be different. So anyway, but that was why she ended up getting kicked out partway through her testimony. But here in this trial, they don't have that. They haven't made that the rule. So any of the witnesses can just be hanging out in the courtroom. They can be watching this on TV. They can be reading articles about it, and it's not a problem. But this is an interesting point here by Leslie. Even if she's not able to ask any more questions on this, the jury has heard so far that he's been following along, and he knows that there's been testimony that the computer guy, that he was accompanied by his very pregnant wife at this thing. And he's not shifting his testimony to fit that. He's like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. So I'm not going to testify to something that I don't remember if I don't remember it. So this bolsters his credibility and his honesty, in my opinion. You might have a different opinion. You might still feel a certain way about some of the other things that he said that were a little bit clumsy, that might raise a red flag for you. But for me personally, this bolsters his credibility right here.
You recall being interviewed by a private investigator named Randy Later and myself at your home, your parents' home in Agora in January of 93.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember at that time we went over your recollection of being at the house when the computer person came there?
Yes, ma'am.
And you recall at that time you understood that the computer person was accompanied by his wife.
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time you recall telling me that you couldn't remember the wife.
Yes.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Mr. Whalen, are you
Whatever.
lying under oath here in this trial?
No, ma'am.
Are you making up things that you don't really remember?
No, ma'am.
Are you testifying only to what you actually can remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you are aware of the fact, are you not, that Craig Signorelli claimed that he was the person that was there when the computer people came?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he tell the truth about that?
No, ma'am.
Ooh.
Based on your knowledge of Craig Signorelli, is he capable of making up that story?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Now, we've talked about the 2 visits that you made to the jail in May of 1990. And I believe you testified the 3rd time you went was in January of 1993,
Yes, ma'am.
and you went with me.
Yes, ma'am.
And did I give you some instructions before the visit began?
Yes, ma'am.
Overruled.
What did I instruct you?
Don't talk about anything about the case.
And did you follow my instructions?
You sat right next to me to make sure I did. Yes, ma'am.
And at the time that you visited Erik in January of 1993, was that after Mr. Later and I had interviewed you at your home?
Yes, ma'am. A few days later.
Do you recall when Erik was staying at your house, his receiving telephone calls from other people?
I don't remember.
Okay. You do recall, I believe, that he made calls to relatives of his?
Sustained.
Do you remember him making any phone calls at all while he was staying at your house before you left for school?
Yes, ma'am.
And who do you recall his calling?
His aunt trying to get a hold of Lyle.
And do you know whether or not he ever got a hold of Lyle from your house?
I believe it was the day after we were at the Beverly Hills house or the day after that.
So at some point, you believe he did reach Lyle from your house?
Yes, ma'am.
When you
Nick Wilson, thanks so much for the member chat. He's been a member for 10 months. Hi, all. In a bad mood, LOL. I'm sorry. I hope we can cheer you up a bit, but thanks for hanging out with us.
went to, when you came back from Connecticut in May of 1990, and you wanted to see Erik, was there something you had to do to be able to get to visit Erik?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was it you had to do to be able to get to visit Erik?
You had to call the grandmother.
Erik's grandmother?
Yes, ma'am.
You had to arrange to visit through her?
Yes, ma'am, because I was made aware that she was going down every day and you had to go when she went or a day she wasn't going.
Okay, was it your understanding that the jail only permits one visiting session for an inmate a day?
I was made aware of that once I was trying to find out if I could see Erik. Yes, ma'am.
So that if you didn't make the arrangements with the grandmother and Mrs. Menendez had gone down there first, you wouldn't be able to visit.
Exactly.
Now, when you went down there the first day to see Erik, was his grandmother with you?
Not with me going down there, but she was at the place when I arrived.
She was at the jail.
Yes.
So you met with her.
Yes, ma'am.
So you could all go in together?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you all go in together?
Well, Noel, who Erik was dating at the time, and Jamie, who Lyle was dating at the time, were there as well.
Okay. So let's just talk about who was visiting Erik that day. Did his grandmother actually visit with him that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And you visited with him?
Yes, ma'am.
And his girlfriend Noelle visited with him?
Yes, ma'am.
And your friend Scott, who was with you?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's 4 people.
Yes, ma'am.
How long was the visiting period?
I think 20 minutes.
20
tops.
minutes total.
Yes, ma'am. 20 minutes.
That was the limit on visiting. Is that
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. From what I remember,
So the 4 of you spent 20 minutes visiting with Erik together,
just kind of passing the phone around. Yes, ma'am.
and each one saying a few words.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, for the second visit with your sister Katie, the next time, did you also meet up with Mrs. Menendez, Erik's grandmother, on that occasion?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Noelle also there, Erik's girlfriend?
No, ma'am.
So was it just the 3 of you that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that another 20-minute visit?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you allow his grandmother to talk to him during that visit?
Yes, ma'am.
So you passed the phone around again.
That's correct.
And you recall that the time I went down there with you in January of 93,
Yes, ma'am.
did they limit us to a 20-minute visit also?
Not even that long, ma'am. Yes.
Now, you indicated to Detective Zoller when you spoke to him in October of 90 that you did have intentions of visiting Erik again.
That is correct.
And were you prevented somehow by these other people?
I just didn't end up going to see him. Things got in the way. I just didn't have the time to go see him.
Was it also difficult to get his girlfriend in particular to relinquish any time for you to visit?
Yes, ma'am. That's for sure.
She was being kind of possessive.
Sustained.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit needy. She's been doing it for a bit, so I was wondering when they were going to object about it.
I just want to take you back, based on your lengthy acquaintanceship with Craig Signorelli and including 1989, what color, for as long as you've known him, is Craig Signorelli's hair?
Black or really dark brown.
And was it black or really dark brown in August and September of 1989?
Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Faison Cook, member for 8 months with a member chat saying, I love you guys. Aw, we love you too, Debbie. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Going back to the time when you were in Erik's house and on the day that the computer person came, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point during that visit at Erik's house, did you notice that there were boxes of things in his bedroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And what kinds of things were in the boxes?
Tennis rackets, tennis stuff, papers in them, various things, various boxes with various things in them.
And did you spend any time looking through those boxes in Erik's room while you were at his house?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you test, and do you recall now whether or not you did that before or after the computer person arrived?
Before.
But I take it was after Erik had received that note that was supposed to be from Lyle.
Yes, then we went upstairs, he checked his messages, and then we looked through the boxes.
Now, you said that he seemed shook up from that note, and so were you.
Overall, I'll let you ask the question. But let's not go over the same
No.
material as before.
Were you both shook up by this note?
Yes, ma'am. I mean,
Okay, you've answered the question.
okay.
Do you remember if there was a telephone number in the note, a place where Lyle supposedly could be reached?
I never saw the note.
Mm.
I don't know.
You've indicated to Mr. Kuriyama that there was one evening when Erik was staying at your house that you didn't spend the evening with him.
Yes, ma'am.
I think Mr. Kuriyama said one night that you didn't spend with Erik.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, where did Erik sleep that night?
At my house. We just didn't go out that night.
After you moved to Santa Barbara to attend school, did you maintain contact with Erik?
No, I didn't talk to him actually till that next May.
You didn't talk to him between September 5th and the Memorial Day time when you visited him?
No, ma'am. I mean, he might have been home one day on the phone when I called down from Santa Barbara, and I might have said hi, or I always asked how he was doing or when he was leaving, but that was the extent of our conversation until that Memorial weekend.
And if you had made those calls or talked to him during that time, that would have still been in the early part of September 1989.
Yes, between probably the 5th and the 10th.
Did you get busy with school?
Yeah, very much so.
So you didn't see him until you saw him in jail, is that right?
That is,
Overall.
that is correct.
Did she, and you didn't talk to him on the telephone during that time either?
No, ma'am.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
Okay, recross.
Mr. Whalen, you have in front of you Exhibit 215.
Yes, sir.
Looks like it's been kind of crumpled up.
Yes, sir.
Did you wad that thing up last night?
No, sir.
You found that somewhere last night?
Yes, sir. It's in one of my drawers in my room.
Yeah, you save things, correct?
I'm a pack rat. Yes, sir.
You have a good memory too, don't you?
About certain events. Yes, sir.
Do you remember when you picked up Erik Menendez from the airport, where you picked him up?
Baggage claim.
Which airline?
I said I didn't remember.
Do you remember parking at the airport?
No, I don't remember whether I just parked right outside of baggage claim or I parked in the structure. I don't remember.
If you had parked in the structure, would you have kept that parking receipt?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Overall.
No, sir.
You would not have kept that.
No, sir. Don't you have to give it back to him when you pay for it?
You can get a receipt for it.
Oh, no.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's comments.
All right, your
Now-
next question, please.
Mr. Whalen, it wasn't hard to write that note, was it? You had a pen and you had paper right there with you?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Overall.
Is that correct?
It was not difficult to write that. No.
Would it have been difficult for you to write, Signorelli said you did it?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Overall.
Could you have written that?
No, it wouldn't have been difficult. No, sir.
You could have written that on the paper and shown it to Erik Menendez.
That is correct.
So he would have known what was being said.
Yes, sir.
But I didn't.
Now, you indicated that you're the devil's advocate. Is that right at your school?
Yes, sir.
Now, when Craig Signorelli told you that Erik Menendez had said to him that he and Lyle had killed his parents,
Objection, the state's the witnesses.
Sustained.
did you testify that Craig Signorelli told you that Erik Menendez had told him that he and Lyle had killed their parents?
Objection, on the state's testimony.
Overall.
Did I say in court that Craig?
Did that happen? Did Craig Signorelli tell you that?
Yes, sir.
And you found that hard to believe, is that correct?
That is correct.
Was that because Erik Menendez had told you that he was going to kill the people who had killed his parents?
I felt the whole thing was hard to believe.
Okay. Your Honor, there is one area perhaps we should approach this very briefly on.
Okay.
Mr. Whalen, after Craig Signorelli told you about what Erik had told him, you found it hard to believe. Is that correct?
I found the whole episode hard to believe. Everything that was going on.
Why did you find it hard to believe that Erik Menendez and his brother had killed their parents?
Well, Your Honor, this state's testimony is not saying that's.
All right, we don't have clarification at this point as to what you found hard to believe, Mr. Freon?
What is it that you found hard to believe, sir?
Something that was in the media that they're this big, that hit that close to home, that people were that just, I just couldn't believe how close to home something like this was coming.
In particular, what you found?
The whole case, sir.
Now, let's break the whole case down into a few specifics. Can you think of anything specific that you were thinking of when you thought it was hard to believe?
All this being on TV, a good friend of mine, just nothing in particular, just the whole thing that encompassed the whole case.
Does the whole case, does that involve,
Your Honor, at
Your-
this point, I'm going to check out what the purpose of
Why don't
this.
you just rephrase the question, Mr. Freon?
okay. Did you have a belief as to whether Erik and Lyle Menendez had killed their parents?
No, I at the time, no, I did not believe that,
Why?
because I thought they had a good relationship with their parents from what I saw.
You saw no mistreatment?
Nope.
Did you have a particular feeling about whether or not they were abused?
Objection, Your Honor. Court's already ruled on me.
Overruled.
I did not think so.
Object to this, Your Honor. I think it's improper.
Overruled.
In fact, did you indicate that you thought it was a hoax?
Objection.
Overruled.
In my statement,
Yes.
yes, sir. At the time, I just didn't believe the whole case. Yes, sir.
So when Craig Signorelli told you that, you just didn't believe it.
I couldn't believe it. It was just hard for me to believe.
And you had been a good friend of Erik, and you had seen his parents come to his tennis lessons.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
You had seen his relationship with his mother.
Yes, sir.
Now, as it turns out, Craig Signorelli was correct.
Objection, Your Honor. Argument. It's for the jury to decide.
Also vague as to what was
Now, you
correct
said
about.
that Craig Signorelli told you at one point that he wanted to help Erik. He wanted to say that Lyle forced Erik, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you thought that he was making up a story at that point, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you know at that point that it was Erik's idea in the first place?
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike.
Sustained. Objection sustained to the question.
You've been watching this trial and reading in the paper about the trial, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you read that it was
Your Honor,
Erik's idea
I'm
initially?
going to object characterizing testimony that way. And object to
Yeah.
What this witness heard is hearsay.
Yep.
Objection sustained.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
you indicated,
that's improper because what the prosecutor is trying to say here is he's trying to get this witness to say, yeah, it was Lyle's idea. He convinced Erik to kill their parents because he has no way of knowing that. I mean, other than through reading articles or on the testimony on the trial, or watching it on TV. He has no independent way of he's no better than literally anybody else in America at being able to testify to that. So that's definitely an improper question there. Especially particularly in the way that Kuriyama asks it. So yeah, I definitely agree that was a proper objection, properly sustained.
that you had seen witnesses, the computer person, come in and testify, correct?
Misstates his testimony.
Well, did you see them on TV?
No, sir. I did not see them on
Did you
TV.
read about their testimony in the newspaper?
Yes, I heard the people. Yes, sir. I did.
So you knew at that time that both Ed Heyman and Debbie Heyman had identified Craig Signorelli as the person being there.
That is correct.
And you indicated that you were gone away to school and then you went to Connecticut for a while, correct?
Correct.
And that you didn't come back until May 1990.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
But you had seen Craig Signorelli on hard copy prior to that time, correct?
Yes, sir. To me coming back to Los Angeles, that is correct.
And Craig Signorelli, according to the media, they believed he was the best friend of Erik Menendez.
Objection, Your Honor, which is what the media believes.
All right.
Yeah.
Why don't you rephrase the question as it relates to this witness?
Did you actually see this hard copy segment?
Yes, sir.
Did you?
This is so that's also improper because of the fact that, the witnesses are not subject to the rule, right? The witnesses can this is why this can get hairy, right? Because the witnesses here are able to read articles about the trial, follow up on the trial, see whatever has been testified to, which is just I disagree with that here. I really do, because of the fact that they can line up their testimony. But now you have Kuriyama asking him about what the media is saying about this case. Meanwhile, who's not allowed to read articles or look up anything about the case or watch TV news programs about the case? The jury. He's trying to introduce this now improperly to the jury, what the media is saying about this case, when they are not allowed to know about that kind of stuff. That's dirty, in my opinion. That's really dirty. He knows that. He clearly knows that the jury's not allowed to get that information. But yeah. Mm.
Did you see Craig Signorelli on that segment?
I'd seen him and maybe it wasn't particularly hard copy, but yes, I did.
And that was prior to May of 1990?
Yes, sir.
And you weren't being shown on those programs as his best friend, were you?
No, sir.
As his best friend, as the king.
Did you read in the paper that Ed Heyman and Debbie Heyman had seen Craig Signorelli on hard copy or one of those shows and said, that is the person that we saw?
I'm well aware of that. Yes, sir.
How are you aware of that?
How am I aware of that? They pointed out that it was Signorelli?
Yes.
From hearing something about their testimony that they were up here, that they said it was that they thought it was Signorelli who was there.
And did you read that in the paper, or did somebody tell you that?
It could have been both. I know my sister's really up to date on it, so she might have told me. I might have read it.
Now, when you first testified in cross-examination about these two visits with Erik Menendez in May of 1990, you stated that you were with a friend. I believe his name was Scott.
Yes.
And then on redirect examination, you changed that and you added a couple of other people. Is that
I did not change that.
Did you alter your testimony somehow?
No, sir.
It's the same thing.
No, sir.
You didn't mention any other people being there.
They asked me who I went down to see him with, and I said who I went down to see him with. It was common knowledge that Mrs. Menendez was there every day.
And these other people that you've mentioned, the girlfriends, what is it, Noelle Terleski?
Yes, sir.
Jamie Pisarczyk?
Yes, sir.
They were there as well.
The first day.
And the second day, and the first day is the day that you sent this note, this Exhibit 215?
No, sir.
It was a second day.
Yes, sir. My sister was in my presence.
And who else was in your presence?
Mrs. Menendez.
You didn't show the note to Mrs. Menendez before you showed it to Erik Menendez, did you?
It was a blank piece of paper. No, I wrote the note as I was sitting down at the desk.
I have nothing further at this time. Lauren.
Any regret?
Mr. Whalen, you remember when I came to your house in January of 1993 with Mr. Lader? We talked about what the defense was in this case. Recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
I told you what it was that we were going to show Mr. Menendez and Mrs. Menendez did to their children. Remember my telling you that?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you remember what your reaction was?
Objection, Your Honor.
Well, it has to do with, yes. Mr. Whalen, let me ask you something about this interview that was conducted with you by Detective Zoller in October of 1990.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
How did the issue of abuse come up in that interview? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Did Detective Zoller bring it up?
He might have asked me the question. I don't remember.
Did he ask you if Erik had ever complained about his parents mistreating him?
Yes, he might have.
Okay. Now, did you know, Mr. Whalen, based on your knowing Erik and your knowing his parents, that they put a great deal of pressure on him?
You could sense it a little bit at the tennis matches.
Did you know that they made most of his decisions for him?
No, I wasn't aware of that side of his.
How about his decision of where to go to school?
Yeah, I knew he didn't particularly want to go to UCLA.
And do you know why it was he was going there anyway?
His father?
His father what?
He said more or less that his father was making him go to school there.
Now, you know now, do you not, Mr. Whalen, that Erik did indeed participate in killing his parents?
Yes, ma'am.
Has your opinion of him as a person changed?
No, ma'am.
You indicated that you wanted, that you went to see him because you wanted to help him.
Correct.
And are you testifying because you wanted to help him?
I'm just testifying to the facts that I know. I mean,
But you want to help him, don't you?
yes, ma'am.
You care about him, don't you?
Very much so.
And why do you care about him?
He's never been anything but a good friend to me, and I'd always stick by a friend.
Any friend?
No, but he was a particularly good friend.
Is it because of the kind of person he is that you're sticking by?
Very much so.
When you and Erik were good friends in high school, were you the kind of friends who would sit and have long talks about your innermost feelings and thoughts? Or were you more that get up and have a good time type of friends?
The latter.
The get up and have a good time.
Yes, ma'am.
At that time in your emotional development, were you very introspective and thoughtful, or were you sort of out there partying around?
No, I was, again, the latter. I was not too introspective. I was out to have a really good time.
So would it be fair to say that you didn't particularly confide in Erik and he didn't particularly confide in you?
No, ma'am. We were pretty much go out and have good time buddies.
This is an interesting
Was there
point.
something about his relationship with Craig that seemed secretive to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there something about the way Craig lived his life or acted around his peers that also seemed secretive?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever know Craig Signorelli to have a girlfriend?
No, ma'am.
When he was in college, did he show any interest in girls? Did you know Erik's girlfriend?
A few of them.
Did you know Kirsten Smith?
Yeah. We knew of each other and mutual friends. And
Did you know other girls at Calabasas High School that Erik dated?
mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
And you've already
Yeah, it's interesting. The prosecution trying to object on relevance on that question now because they don't want it to come in, but they sort of opened that door with that suggestion about the jacuzzi with the champagne and their boxers kind of thing. But this is entirely appropriate for Leslie to get into, to say like, hey, look, let's talk about all of the girlfriends that Erik had in high school at Calabasas that you saw. It's interesting that she's kind of comparing it to like, did you ever see Craig Signorelli with any girls or showing any interest in girls? It kind of feels like she's suggesting that maybe Craig had a thing for Erik or something. I don't know. Which I don't know how I feel about that. The defense doesn't need that to show Craig being a jealous person, a jealous friend, a rivalrous friend. But unless there actually is a suggestion that he interested in dudes instead of girls, and Erik was one of them. I don't know how I feel about that particularly, that line of questioning from Leslie. Um, but um, but it is entirely appropriate for her to rebut the suggestions by the prosecution. Um, if yeah, if there was evidence to rebut it.
You've already indicated that you met Noel Terlesky at the jail.
Yes, ma'am.
I have nothing further.
Any other recross? This might be it. Oh no, I think there's about 5 minutes left, maybe.
Mr. Whalen.
Look at that
you
smile.
Testified that Erik Menendez.
Look at that smile. How he was like, "Oh, here he comes again. Here he comes again. What's he gonna get into now?" As he's like watching him walk up to the podium again.
This is a non-violent person.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, yes, sir. To my knowledge. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
You did that yesterday.
Twice in 2 days. Apologize.
Hang on. Wait. Oh, I missed it. Wait, let me see if I can go back a little bit. Sorry.
With respect to Mr. Whalen, you've testified that Erik Menendez is a non-violent person.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I mean, yes, sir. To my knowledge. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
You did that yesterday.
Twice in 2 days. Apologize.
That's funny.
Now, with respect to Erik Menendez, he wanted to play football, you said yesterday, right?
Yes, sir.
Objection beyond scope.
Yes. And his parents didn't want him to do that.
Yes, sir.
They didn't want him to get hurt.
Elaine, your mic. He's got to step up to the mic, man. Come on.
Sir.
Now,
How should speculation arise?
did Erik Menendez tell you why his parents didn't want him to play football?
No, I mean, he just said my parents aren't going to let me play football. That was the gist of it.
And he wanted to.
Yes, sir.
Erik Menendez is taller than you, isn't he?
Yes, sir.
Strong athlete.
Yes, sir.
Would have made a pretty good football player.
Yes, sir.
Pretty aggressive.
Objection.
Aggressive.
Pretty aggressive.
Yes.
I mean, he was an aggressive tennis player. Yeah.
You know, playing football, you have to be pretty aggressive, don't you? Do you think that he would have been a good football player?
He would have been more of a wide receiver. That takes a lot more grace and things like that. That was the kind of caliber that
Yeah.
Erik was.
He's big and he had speed.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking is like he's a pretty lean guy. So Erik is a pretty lean guy. So he seems to be more of like a wide receiver kind of body type rather than like some big strong linebacker or like defensive end or something that's going to like do the tackling, right?
He looked like he had talent and the thing it takes to be a good receiver.
Now, did you know, you testified about this friend of yours, Erik Menendez. You knew that he had committed some residential burglaries in Calabasas, correct?
Yes, sir.
You knew about that.
Yes, sir.
And it involved thousands and thousands of dollars.
Objection, Your Honor. Be proper. Well, I'd like to be heard.
Okay. It involved a great amount of property and money and jewelry, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
It's pretty sophisticated burglary as to the second burglary, wasn't it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Whoa. Microphone.
This entire line, given our stipulation.
All right, you may approach.
Thank you.
I think they were trying to fix the mic issue because he was so quiet you couldn't really hear him. And then it just went insane. Okay. All right. So she's going to be heard on it. Maybe they'll fix the mic in that meantime.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Whalen, you testified that you like to get up and have a good time when you were with Erik, correct?
Yes,
You're
sir.
not the kind that talks about things. That'd be fair to say?
Overall.
Could you clarify that question?
Yes. You and Erik didn't confide in one another. Is that correct?
Not to any deep degree. I mean, Miss Abramson said if we had long, drawn-out talks, no. I mean, we talked about various things, but nothing.
Did Erik Menendez ever tell you about the burglaries that he was involved in?
No.
You heard about that from someone else?
Yes, sir.
At some point, Erik Menendez and his family had to leave Calabasas.
Objection, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question, please.
At some point, did the Menendez family have to leave Calabasas?
Same objection.
Same question.
Literally the same
Do you know
question.
why the Menendezes left Calabasas?
Objection, Your Honor. This will call for hearsay or speculation.
Yeah.
All right, why don't you try to pin it down with that?
Did Erik Menendez ever tell you why they had to leave Calabasas?
Objective form question again.
Overall.
No, sir. I just knew they had moved to Beverly Hills.
Now, you talked about the relationship that Craig Signorelli had with Erik Menendez, and it was much closer in terms of they were confidants of each other.
Objection mistakes the testimony.
Overall.
Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. Different than my relationship with Erik.
They would talk about things. Oh, let me ask you this. Did you know of any activities that they would collaborate on in terms of writing things?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask for the-
Oh, he's going to get into the script thing.
Your Honor, I'd like to.
No, this goes to a relationship of, or this witness's knowledge of relationship with Mr. Signorelli and the defendant. Objection overruled.
No, sir. Not to any great detail, no.
Well, to any detail, did you know that they were writing screenplays together?
Objection,
No,
Your
sir.
Honor.
Overall.
No, sir.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Oh, my
Did you know that Craig Signorelli was involved in the Calabasas burglaries also?
Ooh.
Yes, ma'am.
I have nothing further.
You may step down.
What should I do with this, sir?
Just leave it right there.
All right. You take my water?
You can take it. All right, your excuse, subject to being recalled, however.
Yes, sir.
Your next witness?
My next witness, Your Honor, is Kathleen.
So now we're going to get to
Kathleen Bulow-Cohen,
mother.
Bulow-Cohen. Kathleen, Kathleen.
Is Mrs. Cohen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, but I need you to either get closer to the microphone or we'll have to, good.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Are you Casey Whalen's mother?
Yes, I am.
And do you know Erik Menendez?
Yes, I do.
Did you, in August of 1989, attend a memorial service for Erik's parents here in Los Angeles?
Yes, I did.
And at the time of that memorial service, did your son Casey make a request of you?
Yes, he did.
What did he request?
He asked that under the circumstances, would it be all right if Erik stayed with us? And I said, absolutely.
And when was it strike that. What was your understanding of when it was that Erik was going to stay with you?
Erik was going to go back to Princeton for the funeral, and then when he returned, he would be staying with us.
And do you recall approximately how long it was from the memorial service until Erik started to stay with you?
Approximately, probably 5 days to a week.
5 days to
A week.
thank you.
Sorry.
And after the day of the memorial service, do you recall any telephone calls from Erik to your home in Agoura before he returned from New Jersey?
Yes, I do.
And to the best of your understanding, were your son Casey and Erik doing some arranging for how Casey was to pick Erik up?
Yes.
And do you have in your mind's eye, in your memory, a recollection of the day when your son Casey left your home to go pick Erik up?
Yes, I do.
And was it your understanding that Casey was supposed to go to the house in Beverly Hills before he went to the airport?
Yes, it is.
And at some point that day, did you receive a telephone call from your son?
Yes, I did.
And without telling us what he said, can you describe what his demeanor was like on the phone?
Nervous. Concerned.
Did you give him advice?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell him to go to the airport?
Yes, I did.
Now, sometime subsequent to receiving that telephone call from your son, did you see Erik Menendez and your son together later that day?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall where it was that you saw them?
Well, we went for dinner.
And where did you go to dinner?
La Paz.
What is La Paz?
It's a Mexican restaurant.
Where is it?
Canoga Park. Woodland Hills.
Now, do you recall any discussion that was being conducted by Erik and or your son at dinner that night relating to anything that had happened that day?
There was some talk about a computer.
And was it Erik or Casey or both of them talking about a computer?
I don't recall.
And was it your understanding, where was this computer that they were talking about?
Oh no, the audio's out. Oh no. We're missing testimony.
Are you, we can do it side.
Well, let's do it. Let me just move along and then we can go back. Was there any discussion at the dinner table? Well, strike this. Did Erik Menendez say anything at the dinner table about his brother or trying to find his brother?
Yes.
Has to go to state of mind, Your Honor.
Overall, the answer was 10.
Was there-
Yes.
And do you recall what it was Erik was saying about his brother?
He was trying to locate him. He was concerned.
Did he indicate that he didn't know where he was or that he didn't know?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
What did he indicate about his state of knowledge of Lyle's whereabouts?
He wasn't sure how to contact him. He wasn't sure exactly where he was, my understanding.
Did he indicate whether or not he understood what state Lyle was in? California, New York, New Jersey, anywhere?
I believe he did.
And do you remember now what he thought?
New Jersey.
Was there a point when you were aware that Erik was talking to his brother on the telephone?
Yes.
And do you recall when that was in relation to this dinner when Erik said he was trying to locate his brother?
It was either the next day or the day after that.
And did you overhear a conversation between Erik and his brother?
I heard Erik on the phone and he seemed upset.
And did he seem upset with Lyle?
Yes.
Do you recall what he said?
Objection plus reversal.
Sustained.
Has to do with state of mind, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Do you recall whether or not anything was said about computers or wills in that phone conversation?
Objection hearsay.
Overall,
Yes, there was.
And would you tell us what you overheard being said on that topic?
He questioned why the will was either going to be erased or was erased.
Erik was questioning Lyle as to why the will was either going to be or was erased.
Yes.
And this is the day after your son Casey has picked Erik up at the airport.
Either the day after or the
Or
day after that. Exactly.
So this is either September 2nd or 3rd. Is that correct?
Yes.
Objection leading for motion to strike. Speculation.
as to what?
As to the dates.
Well,
Objection sustained, the answer is stricken.
do you recall what date it was that your son picked Erik up at the airport?
Yes.
What date was it?
September 1st.
Now, do you know who Craig Signorelli is?
Yes, I do.
And before Erik was arrested, did you see Craig Signorelli at a football game?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall approximately what month and what year it was that you saw Craig at a football game?
Yes, I do.
And when was it?
October of 1989.
And what kind of football game was this?
My daughter was cheering and Craig Signorelli's brother was quarterbacking.
What
So
teams?
high school.
Calabasas High School and I believe Moore Park.
And did it take place at Calabasas High School or at Moore Park?
No, Moore Park.
And did you see Craig Signorelli during the game?
Yes, I did. We sat together.
He sat next to you?
Yes.
And did you notice anything about him?
He seemed nervous. Nervous.
Interesting.
And did
Was he
you
nervous
strike up
about?
a conversation with him that had anything whatsoever to do with the Menendez family or the death of the Menendez parents
It was a topic of conversation.
between both of you?
Yes.
Were there other people there who were also conversing about it?
No,
Sure.
Craig and I were sitting together. So
So the two of you were discussing the fact that the Menendez parents had been killed?
yes.
And did Craig tell you something that he was doing, some project of his at that time?
Yes, he did.
And what did he tell you he was doing?
He was told me that he was involved in writing a screenplay and that
Screenplay about, did he tell you what about?
the murder.
Excuse me?
The murder.
Of the Menendez parents?
Yes.
Okay, and what else did he say about the screenplay he was writing about their murder?
That he thought that he could sell it for a lot of money.
And did you say anything to him in relation to that?
I think I was dumbstruck.
Oof.
Why were you dumbstruck?
Sustained.
Now, let's go back for a moment to when Erik came to stay with you. Approximately how long did he stay at your house?
About 10 days.
And during the time that your son Casey was still there, did Erik sleep at your house every night?
I believe all but one night.
Did your son Casey go back to school on the 5th?
Yes, he did.
And did Erik sleep there every night until after Casey left?
Yes, he did.
So one night after Casey left, Erik might not have stayed at your house overnight.
Right.
And did you notice at some point after Erik started to stay at your house that Craig Signorelli started to show up?
Yes.
And after your son left for school, did Erik seem to spend some time with Craig?
Yes.
Interesting.
And was it only after your son Casey left that Erik seemed to be spending time with Craig?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Cross-examination.
Mrs. Cohen,
Yes.
are you sure about that date, September 1st, or could it have been a day before or a day after?
No, I believe it was September 1st.
What makes you think that?
Well, talking with my son and my daughter, and I know that the day that my son left for school too, so counting backwards, I would say September 1st.
You would say that, but discounting anything you were told by either your son or your daughter. do
I
you
believe
have
it
a
was September
specific
1st.
recollection of the particular day?
I believe it was September 1st.
And you do that, you arrive at that date by counting back from when your son had to leave?
No, by picturing the day.
Now, were you working during that period of time?
No, I was not.
So it could have been any day during the week.
No, it was September 1st.
No, because I know that he was in New Jersey for the funeral, and it was planned for him to come back on a certain date. So
You know-
if the funeral was if he left Los Angeles, the 25th or 26th, I know that he was there for at least 4 or 5 days.
Do you know that the funeral was, which day the funeral was on?
At the time I did, yes.
Have you been watching the case or reading about the case at all?
Yes, I have.
Did you hear the aunt testify in this case, Teresita Baralt, that
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay.
I haven't heard the question.
Well,
The
you have to
question-
recite testimony.
Well, if it's accurately recited, it's hardly harmful, so let's hear what the question
the
is.
question is that did you see or read in the paper that Mrs. Baralt, Jose Menendez's older sister, testified that Erik Menendez came in for just the memorial service and left the next day? He
Objection,
didn't
Your
stay
Honor.
for more than 24 hours.
Objection, Your Honor, that totally misstates Mrs. Baralt's testimony.
All right, the objection is sustained as to the form of the question. You may ask a different question, please.
Did you hear any testimony by Mrs. Baralt, Teresita Baralt?
Yes, I did.
Was it your understanding from that testimony that Erik Menendez came in for the memorial service and then left?
I didn't hear that.
Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike the question. That misstates Mrs. Baralt's testimony.
All right, objection is overruled. The answer will stand.
Getting to the statement that you told the jury about Craig Signorelli at this football game in October of 1989. Did you know at that time that Craig Signorelli had spoken to Erik Menendez about the killings of his parents?
No, I don't.
You didn't know that?
No.
You didn't know that he had information from Erik Menendez?
Object to the form
No.
of the question, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Now, in talking about this screenplay,
Yeah, the way that he asked that question makes it sound like Craig Signorelli definitively had information about the killings from Erik Menendez when that is 100% disputed. So it's like that would have been I understand that objection, and I don't think that should have been overruled, because it would have been a more proper question if he had said, "Do you understand that Craig Signorelli says that he talked to Erik Menendez, or have you heard that Craig Signorelli said that?" Because it's just it might be a little bit nuanced, but there is a difference. There is definitely a difference, because the way that he said it makes it sound fairly definitive. But good on this witness to say, nope, I don't know. I mean, assuming that that's the truth, of course.
did he give you details about the fact that he wasn't going to put in the real names of the people involved?
No.
Did you know that Craig Signorelli had a conversation with Erik Menendez that was taped on November 29th, 1989?
Your
No, I
Honor,
did not.
object to the question.
All right, she's answered no, she
How could
did
you
not.
know that?
The question is,
No.
been asked and she's answered it. The question is now, does she know?
Did Craig Signorelli indicate to you that he had been collaborating with Erik Menendez on screenplays?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
What was the answer?
No.
He didn't tell you that?
No.
Did Craig Signorelli tell you that the screenplay would be based on the actual Menendez murders?
We were talking about the murders, so I believe it would follow.
Now, you indicated that 10 days, you believed it was about 10 days that Erik Menendez stayed at your house,
Mm-hmm.
and that he slept over all but one night that you know of.
Yes.
How long was it that you knew Erik Menendez?
Objection beyond the scope, Your Honor.
Overruled.
About 2 years.
At that point, your son had met Erik Menendez at Calabasas High School
That's correct.
in the 11th grade,
Mhm.
and you really didn't know much about Erik Menendez, I take it.
I went to his tennis matches, and he came over to the house and spent time with my sons.
Now, as far as you knew, would you check in on Erik Menendez and your son every night to make sure that they're safely in bed?
The next morning, if not that night.
The next morning you would go into the room to make sure that they were okay?
No, I was not working, so I was around the house, and so I was aware that they were in the home.
Now, Erik Menendez was about 19 years old at this time?
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Now, you didn't know that at the age of 1.5, Erik Menendez snuck out of his house in his diapers and would go across the street to his relative's house. Did you know
No,
about that?
no.
Yeah, I object.
All right, objection sustained.
You would see Craig Signorelli at your house with Erik Menendez, is that
Yes.
correct? Is there any way that you can show exactly when it was that Erik Menendez first arrived at your house?
Objection. Question carried.
I believe it could be done.
Objection overruled. The answer was 10.
How do you think it can be done?
I can go back possibly and look at, I usually keep calendars. I believe I threw that year out, but I can go back and look at telephone bills or whatever.
Okay. For 1989.
Believe so.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
No.
All right, thank you. May you step down. You're excused. Your next witness.
And
Katie Whalen.
All right, how long do you think this testimony will be?
I think it's going to take us to pass the hour, and we're not supposed to go past the hour.
All right, that witness come back on Tuesday?
Yes, you can.
Okay, then we'll
right.
resume on Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, at 1:30. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any
Okay.
final opinions about it.
That's the end of it. So that is today's testimony. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I think it's been some interesting bits about Craig Signorelli, which I don't know if, you may or may not remember Craig Signorelli's testimony. I remember initially being very impressed by, this was the case with all of the friends that were brought out, classmates of Erik and Lyle. Every single one of them that was brought out by the prosecution, they started off seeming very credible and very, very, believable until cross-examination. And then they were just completely destroyed. They just completely dismantled handily by Leslie or by the other attorneys working for the brothers. So I already had a very poor impression of Craig Signorelli. So getting this other perspective from other people that knew him as well, to get that sort of that character rebuttal testimony from them on it, was also very interesting. So yeah, interesting perspective coming from him, and then also from his mother, which corroborates them talking about the computer guy, them talking about, this issue about the will disappearing on the computer. It seems to, her hearing them talk about it seems to corroborate that Casey was actually the guy that was there with Erik and the computer guy. But that still has to contend with the testimony by the computer guy and by his wife, that they say they identify Craig Signorelli as having been there. But if you look at Craig Signorelli and you look at Casey Whalen, they also kind of look similar. So I can also see somebody mistaking their identity for one another as well. But anyway, so that's going to be very interesting. And also, this is interesting. Care Bear, thank you so much for this. Says we have 7 brief witnesses until Lyle takes the stand, and I anticipate Lyle is going to be on the stand for a very long time when he is up there. So it seems like we are rapidly approaching the testimony of the brothers, which will be obviously very, very interesting to watch. So so thank you for that, Care Bear. And yeah, so yeah, that about does it. So thank you to everybody in the chat that has been engaging and everything. Thank you to everybody that has liked the video. It does help with pushing this all out to the YouTube universe. And always thank you to the mods for moderating the conversation here to make sure that, you know, we've got folks that are of one mind and another in the chat. And I love seeing the discussion between people and everybody keeping that respectful and appropriate, which is great. I love that. Because it's, you know, pushing back on how people are thinking and how people are seeing things is always great. I mean, that's how we get to the truth with a capital T, right? So all right. Be on the lookout for some new uploads this week on this channel, and otherwise, for those of you that are members, I will see you guys on Friday for the casual members only live stream. All right.